Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had to find his own way part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story Tapchaka from fanfiction. So let's start the video. Shoko stared at her mother in shock. Not just a few moments ago, she entered the kitchen to be assaulted with boiling water. She had not advanced in the training with her father to have enough control to prevent any major damage through her total body temperature control. Through her quick thinking, the water that was thrown at her mostly hit the ice that was created as a shield, but a good portion struck right underneath her eye, later leaving a permanent scar for years to come. Seeing what she had done and feeling deep regret, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, her mother, was quick to apply her ice quirk to the stunned 9-year-old. That situation was what one young 𝗧𝗵𝗲 found herself in, a discarded teapot, a frantic, frightened mother tending to her wound. She did not know why her mother was currently throwing her panicked apologies. It was an unfortunate accident. She should be the one who is sorry and not Ray. She is the one who surprised her mother in her mind. She should have announced herself better. The burning sensation that was the damaged flesh under her left eye currently being iced by the grieving mother was her punishment for her carelessness. All Shoko wanted to do was cry. The injury hurt so bad, but she couldn't. Like All Might, she was going to smile through it. Like her favorite hero who would save people with a smile no matter the situation, she had to show a brave front. It hurt so bad, but this was going to be nothing compared to what a hero might face. Shoko had experienced worse pain through her training with her father. Or at least that's the lie she had told herself at that moment. "I'm so sorry, Shochan, Mommy's really sorry." Ray apologized to her daughter profusely, as the ice she created by her quirk formed a seal between her hand and her child's injured face. Her hope beyond hope was that the damage was not too extensive. They both heard 𝗵𝗲's voice coming from the foyer as he had returned from his rounds, with him entering from the front door. "Saving someone with a smile. Saving someone with a smile." The young girl repeated that line of thinking as if a mantra she would say, a pained frown becoming a manic smile. She grabbed her mother, dragging her to the closest bathroom that she knew had a first aid kit, knowing how her father would react. Once they were in it, she locked the door behind them and took off to the medicine cabinet, towards the bandages that her mother had used on her and her siblings several times before. She used the step stool she had used to brush her teeth and wash her face when she was younger, to climb onto the counter as she had done time and time before, putting the med kit on her lap. They had to hurry because she knew that her father would not be too pleased with the events, and if she could cover it up, or at the very least he could see her mother treating the injury, then her mother would be safe. She would be in the end taking the punishment she had coming for what she thought was her mistake. Ray watched her daughter move as if this was those other times. Only then did the situation hit her like a truck. Not only did she compare her sweet little girl to her father and attacked her, but her show was also acting that the situation was like any other time she got hurt, waiting for her mother to nurse her with that same guilty look on her face. The same face that reflected hers, and it ate her alive. It wasn't before Shoko started organizing the contents, as she had always done after one of her husband's more involved training sessions, did she jumped into action. Pulling the long red hair that she had grown to hate out of the way, she instructed the girl to lower herself under the tap of the sink so the affected area was under the nozzle. "Close your eyes. With burns, you need to run cold water where you got hurt before you bandage it. Don't use your quirk on them, you got that." She spoke calmly as she began running cool water on the burn, getting a relieved hum from the little girl. "I am so sorry, Mama. I will be more careful next time." That got Ray's guilt to consume her completely. The little girl was nothing like the little monster that she had made her out to be. She was a fool to see her admiration for her father as manipulation by her husband. It took all her strength not to break down, but she stayed there tending to her youngest like it was any other day. "Hey, Shochan," she called out to Shoko, who hummed in response. "Do you still want to be a hero?" A sad smile was on her face, looking down at the girl. Shoko grinned widely, bringing her hand up as if the dream that she had thought of was right in front of her, and made a small fist, bringing it down to her chest. "You bet. I think saving people is super cool. Saving people with a fearless smile. I want to be the greatest hero, like All Might." With that declaration, Ray couldn't help but smile. What if you can't be the #1 hero? Her smile did not leave her. Shoko giggled at the question. "It doesn't matter. I don't need to be the number one to be the greatest hero. She didn't know it now, but this was going to be the last conversation that she would have with her mother for years to come. Oh, it's your fault, 𝗧𝗪𝗀 told her father, staring him down with half her face bandaged. A death stare was upon him from her singular eye. Is it now? That woman hurt you, my legacy. Of course, I was going to have her committed. What if she had killed you? The redhead man, that was 𝗵𝗃 Todoroki, the number 2 hero endeavor, said nonchalantly. 𝗧𝗪𝗀 was more than pissed at the casual dismissal. You're the reason that she hurt me. Why was she the one who had to leave when it was your fault? She screamed at him as the two stood in the room where the pair had always trained 𝗧𝗪𝗀's quirk. She had not seen her mother in several days, and after overhearing her 2 older siblings, she knew why. That day she cried for the first time since the incident, something she was praised for, now finding the brave front that she had managed to put up as useless. She looked at her father with disgust. You are the reason that big brother 𝗬𝗂 is gone too. Not wanting to play this game any longer, the man looked at his daughter one more time before huffing, hiding whatever feelings the man had in that moment, and turning to leave, giving her some space so she could cool down. He would also have to explain the situation to her when she does, putting the quirk training on hold for now. That was the plan he had, but he had unintentionally ignored a red flag. I don't have time for this. I am calling off our training until you are ready and have grown up a little. The man only made it to the doorway. For 𝗧𝗪𝗀, this was a hero, the number 2 hero, one of her heroes and her father, and he had ran away from a mistake that he had made. Running away from the people in this world that he should want to save most. For 𝗧𝗪𝗀, that was a point of no return. She was convinced that this man only cared about himself, he was no hero, and he was going to leave her mother in that mental ward without due process out of his selfishness like a villain. She tore at her bandages, revealing the scar under her left eye, while her body started to glow bright orange as she stared at the back of her father's head. Feeling a change in the home's temperature from the increase in heat, he turned around to see a torpedo of crimson hair headed for his head. Not being able to defend himself in time, he took the rocketed headbutt from the girl, noticing the brighter-than-normal fire that trailed her arms. As the two of them fell on top of each other in a heap, the number 2 hero looked up at his daughter, priming a flame-covered fist while straddling his stomach. He shifted his weight from underneath her, causing her to lose balance, falling off of him. She rolled on the floor away from him. In that hallway, she stopped next to a plant not too far away from the room that they came out of. 𝗵𝗃 checked his face, frowning, feeling that his nose was broken. He moved to reprimand his daughter, but was surprised by her using a potted plant to support her attempt to get up, her hands still producing the bright orange flames that were now starting to flicker. The heat radiating off of the girl increased again, and this time he was feeling it starting to sweat. 𝗧𝗪𝗀 was blinded by her rage. She neither spoke nor showed any other emotion in her eyes. She had one thing in mind, a singular goal at the moment. Defeat the person in front of her, and with that, she ran towards her father. Not that she even wanted to call this man that. Her frustration grew with her flames as this time he dodged her tackle, putting her hands out in front of her when she missed. She used the motion to slow the momentum created by her flames before crashing into the wall meters behind 𝗵𝗃 with a loud bang, crumbling to the floor. 𝗵𝗃 winced when he saw his daughter crash into the wall, knowing that it must have hurt. He quickly made his way to her side to check if she was okay. 𝗧𝗪𝗀. The worry was evident in his voice, but to his credit, the training the two had gone through had made her pretty tough to take a collision like that and get up regardless. 𝗵𝗃 felt he had to stop her outburst before any serious harm could be done, so he readied himself to stop her, only to be met with a bright blue flame that she was emitting from both arms, eating away at the sides and sleeves of the t-shirt she was wearing. Oh no, was the only thing that left his mouth as he stared at the fire, threatening to consume everything in its path. Not again. He dropped to his knees as he looked at the little girl. 𝗧𝗪𝗀. The frightened voice of a teenage girl that just came into view with a fire blanket and extinguisher. Only now did he realize that the fire alarm had been going off from the very beginning of the confrontation. Dad? What are you doing? Help me. The girl wrapped her younger sister in the blanket to snuff out the flames, succeeding. 𝗵𝗃 was rudely awakened to reality, looking over at his oldest daughter 𝗬𝗍𝗻𝗻, enclosing her sister in an embrace with the blanket between them. He had gotten up to join them but was stopped by the youngest of his children yelling at him. Stop, stay away, I hate you. Her leaning into the embrace. I hate you. Shoko softly said as she began to cry into her sister's shoulder. Fuyumi was at a loss. The little girl's words seemed to strike a chord with her. The stereo-headed teen looked at her father over her shoulder, who was standing across the hall in shock, then at her sobbing little sister that adored the man she just said she hated in an equal amount of shock. Deciding that it was best to table that issue for now, she picked up the crying girl, turning to her father who hadn't moved a muscle. "I am going to check her for anything serious. Dad, you call for the ambulance just in case." She spoke firmly, comforting the sister in her arms, is currently bawling her eyes out, and was still unbearably hot to the touch. She then moved away quickly without another word. Enji was left there on his own to his thoughts. 5 years had passed since those 2 fateful days with her parents, and Shoko now found herself in a new heap of trouble. Shoko Todoroki, now 14 years old, sat in front of the principal's office of her middle school, not too bothered. She was playing with the flame that her quirk creates while listening to her favorite artist through her earbuds. The reason that she was here is that a classmate made a pass at her through a tasteless comment. He had called her a short stack with nice big tits and he would love to motorboat them, and even made a comment about her giving him a 𝗲𝗧𝗟𝗧𝗏. That was the last straw, and Shoko made him pay for every word. The boy was fine after some quick treatment from the school nurse. Thankfully, he would avoid a hospital visit. "Moran," she said to no one as the flame turned from bright yellow to dark blue. The temperature in the hall increased slightly. The development of her being able to increase the heat of her fire and control the temperature of the ice she makes came straight after the confrontation with her father. Her doctor would say that she was a true regulator. The doctor that had examined her after the incident had renamed her Quirk 𝗧𝗵𝗲. At first, she did not like the name, but after a while, it grew on her. The moment when a star explodes suited her just fine. Though she had used her quirk on the boy, it was not the only reason she was in the pickle she was in now. She had an appointment with the same doctor in a couple hours, and she did not know how long this would take. Shoko. Her sister appeared from around the corner, a disappointed look on her face. "What did you do?" the woman asked the teen. Ever since the incident, Shoko's sister Fuyumi had become her guardian of sorts. Shoko's relationship with their father deteriorated to the point that she did not feel that it was right to stay or safe with how her sister's quirk had evolved to leave things as they were. She thought this was going to be a temporary thing, finding an apartment near the girls' elementary, commuting to her college for her teacher's degree, and asking her friends to babysit when she was busy, but now that unfortunately turned into raising a short-tempered teenage girl. "Why did I get a call from your school about you hurting your classmate with your quirk? I want to hear it from you." Fuyumi spoke, clearly not in the mood. Said girl scratched the back of her head, only showing some remorse to her sister. "It's not my fault he started it. I was just defending myself." Shoko spoke, lowering her head, and putting the fear of God into him. That part she kept to herself. "You nearly..." Fuyumi paused, seeing her sister flinch, stopping mid-yell. "You nearly put the boy into the hospital. You are lucky that his parents are not pressing charges, and your classmates were there to vouch for you." She kneeled in front of the teenager to look into her heterochromatic eyes. "I heard the story from your teachers, but I want to hear it from you." She put a hand on Shoko's cheek. "What happened, Sho?" After a brief explanation of the events leading up to this moment, the older woman sighed, not too pleased that the school let it get to this point. From how she was talking, it was not the first time Shoko had a confrontation with the boy, but the first time she confronted him with violence. "You know 2 wrongs don't make a right, right?" Fuyumi got up, finding the entire situation stressful and getting a nod from the girl seated at the chair next to her sister. "I will talk to your principal and see what the boy's parents want to do. Hopefully things will work out." As soon as the words left her mouth, the door across from them opened. The two were graced by the other students' parents, who in themselves looked mortified. A question of why was quickly put out internally as Enji in his hero costume left the office after them to answer it. The parents bowed to Shoko, apologizing profusely, which got a raised eyebrow from Fuyumi and a clicked tongue, and glare aimed towards the number 2 hero from Shoko. Shoko grabbed her things and without a word began to leave. Quickly, Fuyumi said one more thing to her before she disappeared. "Remember, we still have that appointment with your doctor later." She shouted towards her. "I will meet you there," Shoko replied, leaving in the process. That girl, honestly. Fuyumi turned her attention to the adults, especially the 2 that were apologizing just now. "I'm sorry. You have to forgive my sister." She is not in the best mood at the moment. Fuyumi returned the bow. I find it best to leave her be and wait for her to cool down in most cases. No need to apologize to us. I am sorry if our son was the cause. We'll have a talk with him later. There is no excuse for what he has been doing. The mother waves Fuyumi's bow off, especially when it comes to the daughter of 𝗵𝗲𝗏. Fuyumi fought off a frown when the words left the older woman's mouth. 𝗵𝗵𝗏, who had not said a word, put a hand on each parent's shoulder and spoke. That's quite all right. I highly doubt that Shoko will hold a grudge over this. I'm sure that given the time those two will laugh this whole incident off and probably become friends if we are lucky. Somehow pulling a business card out of nowhere, he handed it to both of them. If anything comes up, this is the number to my hero agency. Feel free to call anytime. It has been a pleasure meeting you both, he concluded. After the pair bid their farewells, he turned to his daughter, who had a glare trained on him. What happened to letting me deal with it, Dad? It's been 5 years, Fuyumi, she has to dash. No, Dad, you can't force her to. We are lucky that the same thing that happened with Tuya's Quirk did not happen with her. The small victories like that are the best we can hope for. Don't force it. You are lucky that she didn't stop training and still wants to be a hero. Sighing, Shoko had left school early and now was wandering around the streets aimlessly in her All Might hoodie, not too pleased with her dad's intrusion in her matters. She was now headed for a convenience store that was not too far from the station she needed for the train to get to her appointment, and she was getting her final quirk evaluation before she is eligible to apply to UA for the new year in 10 months' time. Before she got to the store, however, there was a commotion in one of the side streets, and a crowd of onlookers stood at its entrance with shouts of shock and awe at multiple explosions in a cacophony that remind her of the videos of All Might that would surface every once in a while. Deciding that it was best, she entered the crowd to see what was going on, forcing her way through. As soon as she reached the mouth of the side street, her eyes landed on a blonde boy who was struggling with some slime creature. Is it the boy's quirk going out of control? She asked herself. That did not seem right. She could see the explosions emitting from his hands. That had to be his quirk. Then her vision landed on the heroes that were not moving a muscle with a click of her tongue. They're just standing there while someone needs their help, she thought in mild disgust. She had come to hate those who chose the profession out of vanity or greed. She looked at these heroes in that regard. She was about to step forward since the victim's quirk had caused fires, and she hoped it was out of fear that the heroes had not factored them or the bystanders worried about him. That's when a bush of jungle green hair nearly a head taller than her launched themselves towards the struggle. She blinked for a few seconds before the person, a boy her age going by his uniform, threw the backpack he was carrying right at the blob's eye and finished the action by clawing at it. She questioned the action from the bystander with a lot more heart than these so-called heroes. She brought a hand up to her chest, thinking about the last words that she had said to her mother before a smile crept on her face. I won't fail you too, she muttered as she raised the hood of her All Might jacket over her head before rolling up her sleeves. You bet. I think saving people is super cool. Saving people with a fearless smile. I want to be the greatest hero, like All Might. First the fire, she thought, looking around at the multiple fires throughout the street and getting an idea. The people around her started feeling a chill as a cold wind entered the side street. Some even started to shiver from it. Hope I don't go overboard. It's the first time I did this after all. With that thought, every building up to the struggle they all had their attention on was covered in a thick layer of ice. As the crowd stared at the display in awe, she took off running toward the two boys. A hero with hoses for arms was the first to notice and moved to stop her by calling out, Hey, you there, stop, it's Danjiro but stopped as he saw that both of her arms were covered in falling ice up to her elbow as she ran. Looking at the ice-covered buildings, his voice became hoarse at the mere sight of a 150 centimeters girl packing a quirk that could do all of this. Wow, he said as he stood there like all the others. Getting to the three fighting each other was simple enough, but the display she had done more at her. She had never used her quirk over that great of a distance before, to the effect that her arms were killing her. You were asking for help, she heard the green-haired boy say to the blonde one. Though not hearing the full declaration, it still caused Shoko's smile to grow larger at the implication, taking the boy by his wrist. WWA. The boy shuddered. Eyes growing wide at her touch, looked down at Shoko in her hoodie. Nice, want some help too? She asked the boy. He threw her a panicked nod which prompted her to worm her hand up the back and clasp his. She then dug her opposite arm into the slime, turning her head to the boy, who was now red as a tomato, staring at their hands. "What is this?" The slime man laughed as he saw her arm enter his body elbow deep. "Are you volunteering to be my meat sack girly? But I am sorry, I won't be able to fit inside you. Just wait a bit until I finish here, then I can play with your cute little body all you want." The green-haired boy nearly cried out as the grip on his hand grew tighter and the warmth left it, and it grew cold despite the air around them growing hotter. "Good, you're sentient. This makes things a lot simpler." She lowered her head, letting out a giggle. "Tell me, jelly man, how heat-resistant are you? I would not want to boil the person I am trying to save." 𝐒𝐭𝐻 looked up at the villain with a smile. A combined look of fear crossed the faces of all three men around her, with the thought of, "Is this girl serious?" going through their heads. 𝐒𝐭𝐻 guided the green-haired boy's hand where Blondie's collar would be, all without the cold sensation of her hand leaving. 𝐒𝐭𝐻 waited until he had found the collar and had a tight hold on it. "On three, I want you to pull him out," she told him, getting a grunt of affirmation, still with a dead stare at the slime's eyes. "This is your last chance. Let him go and live to see another day, or don't and spend whatever time you have left wishing you had." An emotionless face caused the slime man to flinch. 1. At first nothing but silence, but after a few seconds the slime began to steam. 2. The green-haired teen felt ice wrap around his hand as the slime began to bubble. 3. The boy pulled and felt no resistance. Blondie was free of the slime that had let him go. Right before the count of 3, Blondie coughed out a lung as he desperately tried to clear his system of any leftovers, while the jungle-headed one checked on him, getting a relieved sigh from 𝐒𝐭𝐻. Any celebrations from the heroes and bystanders were quickly cut off, as not a full moment later 𝐒𝐭𝐻 was full submerged inside the villain. "Fucking little bitch. What were you trying to pull? Sit tight and be my ticket out of here." The slime turned to the crowd and heroes, fully intending to address them. "Let me go and the girl can lead dash." He was cut off by screaming. Looking around wide, he saw no source. The screaming grew louder as his body began to bubble again. That was when he realized that it was him who was screaming, and was this pain that was wrapping his entire body he was feeling. What he hadn't figured in his haste to swallow the girl whole is right before his slime had covered her, she had held her breath. Fuck, fuck, fuck. He began, being cooked from the inside out. "Someone please. Make it stop." The last part came out as a whisper, help not coming. The ice around them started melting as blue flames broke free of the slime in waves of extreme heat. Finding it too dangerous, the jungle-headed teen helped his friend away to a safe distance as he watched the scene play out in fear. The girl had helped them both and he had no way of returning the favor. He cursed at himself for being useless for causing this in the first place. The boy almost starting the waterworks he had been bottling up for the last several hours, but was quickly stopped as he watched a gold blare stop in front of the villain, revealing All Might with his fist cocked. The boy bit his lip in frustration, closing his eyes from the pain as the signature move of the number 1 was called out in an earth-shattering shout. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗧𝗏. Isn't life bullshit? No matter how hard or how carefully she tried, she always ended up here, in someone's arms on the verge of tears. All Might had saved her from that slime's suffocating prison. She was desperately gasping for air that would not enter her lungs, held tight by the number 1 hero. All Might was trying to comfort the girl he thought was having a panic attack because of her shallow, rapid breathing, but that was all for naught as she lost consciousness shortly after him reaching the girl. 𝗒𝐭𝐻's eyes fluttered open and she found an unfamiliar white ceiling. She felt horrible. Examining her surroundings led her to believe that she was in a hospital with the instruments at her bedside and the oxygen mask on her face. Turning her head to the right, she saw a sleeping woman in some pajamas in a chair that she instantly recognized. "Mom," was her first thought as she looked at the woman's face. Having not seen her in 5 years, she had to make absolutely certain that this person in front of her was indeed her mother, confirming it at a glance as 𝗒𝐭𝐻's hand was firmly in the woman's grip. She felt something on her face while moving to get a better look at the woman, and it made perfect sense why she was in the same room as her mother. She took hold of the oxygen mask, helping her breathe, feeling it up. "Of course, I failed again." Tears threatened to fall. Though she wanted to do just that, cry. She sucked it up and took stock of the situation. 𝗒𝐭𝐻 had to be in the hospital, and by the looks of it, the same one that her mother was sent to, judging by her state of dress. That meant her life was in serious danger if the assisted breathing was anything to go by. It was probably for the best that she did not move unnecessarily because she did not know what the damage was. She had an inkling, but she couldn't be sure. Looking over her surroundings, she looked over to a bunch of flowers and cards all placed decoratively and neatly in a corner of the room. Moments went by and her sister entered the room shortly after she had woken up and sat up on the bed in front of their sleeping mother. Fuyumi nearly dropped the tray of food in her hands as her eyes filled with tears at her little sister finally awakening after 3 very long weeks of waiting. Not realizing that Shoko had her hand in her mother's, Fuyumi rounded the bed, putting the tray on the nightstand next to the bed before tackling her in an embrace. The 2 sisters crushed on the bed with Shoko's hand being ripped away from her mother, causing the oldest of the 3 ladies to awaken at the suddenness of the action. Shoko comforted her sister, petting her head as Fuyumi bawled into her shoulder, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "What's going on, Fuyumi? Is everything alright?" A mature voice startled the 2 as the groggy-sounding woman addressed them. Rei Todoroki's vision blurred as she was suddenly assaulted by the vision of her 2 daughters embracing on top of the bed to only realize that her youngest was now awake. "Sho-chan," was all that she could manage looking at her moving around, the first words she had spoken to her in 5 years. "Yes, Mom." The form address was foreign to her as she did not know how she would speak to Rei in any capacity. Rei, however, had her eyes start to water. Her pre-existing thoughts on why her youngest had not once visited her, the fear that truth of why she hurt her daughter had somehow reached the girl and said girl hated her now was pushed to the side, all of it. Shoko's face reflected the same truth, the same sadness and guilt that she saw in the mirror every day since they had last seen each other. At that, the dame broke. Not wasting a single moment, she joined her daughters. Oh. A week passed and Shoko was getting a little claustrophobic and stir-crazy at the sameness of her new routine in the hospital. Even after waking up, Shoko had trouble breathing, and the tests afterward were, to say the least, taxing. They had narrowed the cause of her coma to exhaustion, the overuse of her quirk supernovae to be exacted since she had never used her quirk to those extremes before. Her fight with the slime villain, if you can call it, that had her use her flame in the final moments at a heat and level that was beyond her. She had learned that her quirk had an interesting requirement to be used at its full potential, that it required fuel that her body couldn't provide in large amounts, and which was around her at all times but not in the villain's body. So using her quirk to free herself came with a double-edged sword, a power and weakness that was not clearly understood, but that was not in the forefront of her mind. What was, however, was the visit from the #1 hero she was expecting after her checkup, and now that she had recovered to the point of receiving visitors with the best foot forward. She was almost giddy at the thought of meeting her hero, but was at a point skeptical at the prospect, thinking of her relationship with her parents, especially the #2 endeavor. The fact remained that her father was one of her heroes at one point had disappointed her and flew well below her expectations. She tempered her excitement as the doctor finished up. "You are doing good, Shoko, but since your vitals are not stable, we are going to have to monitor your situation for a little while longer." "That's fine, it's best to be safe than sorry." She lied, but it was the best thing to say. Fighting it might add to the length of her stay here or worse. The woman smiled and finished up, writing in the file she was carrying. "I know it can get pretty boring around here, in your case at least." "I heard you have special visitors waiting, so that's fun." The doctor giggled at the teen's eyes lighting up before being in awe of the #2's daughter fangirling at the #1's appearance. "He's here already." "Wait, you said visitors, as in more than one?" Her doctor raised an eyebrow before answering. "I don't know the full story, but the kid with All Might said that you had saved him and his friend from that villain, and something about not being able to help. But in all honesty, he seemed jumpy, so be careful around him." "All right," the young girl responded. She thought back to that day, and honestly, her memory from then was fuzzy at best, remembering a mop of green hair and a light bulb went off in her head. So he knew All Might, huh? So that's why he was ready to jump in like that. A small smile crept on her face, but she did not comment any further. After the doctor was done, she had to wait several painful minutes as her anticipation was at its highest, and she could not help but fidget on the hospital bed. She would play with her quirk when she was stressed, but she was advised against supernovae's use to be safe, so she didn't. After what felt like an eternity, she heard a knock coming from the door. "Finally," she thought as she answered. "Come in." The first to enter the room was All Might, flanked by a familiar mop of green. Her face lit up at the sight of the both of them, especially at the nervous wreck that was her one-time partner in the rescue of his friend, currently choking out a bouquet. As soon as All Might was clear of the doorway, he launched full into his #1 hero persona. "Hello, young lady. It is I, All Might, here to visit you." He spoke with his bright white teeth on full display, which was met with giggling from the girl. "And this is young 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗃, and if you don't remember him, he is one of the boys you had helped that day." All Might continued. "It is a pleasure to meet you both." Shoko paused. "Officially, that is." She finished. 𝗧𝗑 followed closely behind All Might as the man moved to the chair sitting adjacent to her bed, with him awkwardly standing next to the hero. As if noticing that he had forgotten something, or it being clued in by the #1, 𝗧𝗑 quickly offered the girl the flowers in his hand, appearing a bit shaken. "Thank you, 𝗵𝗃. That is really nice of you." The girl accepted the flowers. All the while 𝗧𝗑 seemed to calm down a bit, nodding at her thanks before taking his spot next to All Might. She looked down at the flowers, and they were a combination of red, white, and violet chrysanthemums, the meaning of which she had no clue of at the moment but will tease the boy to no end later on. All Might cleared his throat, getting the pair's attention. "I would be remiss to tell you that this visit is not just out of courtesy, but one that has come out of a proposition for the both of you." Shoko found All Might's sudden seriousness jarring, but after looking at 𝗧𝗑 avoiding her gaze and looking at his feet in sudden interest made her believe that there was something she was missing out on that the #1 intended to clue her in on. "Young man, you might want to sit down for this. There are questions that you haven't asked that are important to understanding the situation that one of you will find yourself in." Shoko had a sickening feeling entering the pit of her stomach. This confirmed it. She looked at 𝗧𝗑, who was currently emulating a kicked puppy, and frowned. From what she gathered, the boy looked to have his day ruined by that statement, and she was unaware why. Deciding it was best, she waved 𝗧𝗑 over, patting on her temporary bed beside her. She beckoned the boy to her side in a gesture that would offer comfort to the both of them. "You can sit here if you want. It would probably be easier to listen to All Might." That was more for her good than the boy's, but she was relieved all the same when he agreed, uttering the first words he had since entering the room. Thank you." It came out a mess, but Shoko took it all in stride. Once 𝗧𝗑 was situated was when the pro started talking. "As young 𝗵𝗃 already knows, I have the regret to say that there was an injury that I suffered not too long ago." Shoko was shocked to find that her favorite hero's body had deflated into some skeletal man with the same hair and tired, sunken eyes. Lifting his shirt, he heard a gasp from Shoko as her eye examined the crater left where a good portion of his stomach used to be. "The media was misinformed, and the injury I suffered was worse than they were told. After a few surgeries, I quickly found out that my time as a hero was limited." He spoke, extending a hand towards the pair. "That's why I came here to 𝗵𝗃. I came here to find my successor." The palm began to glow a multicolor hue. "Wait." Shoko tried to wrap her mind around all of this, looking over at a serious face on 𝗧𝗑, getting the impression that he had already known about all of this. "A successor?" All Might closed his fist, lowering to his side, looking at the both of them with a sad smile. "That's right. I had not expected to find two of the next generation that are worthy of the legacy of one for all this soon. And with you both showing interest in Yue, there is no time like the present. As your future teacher, I'm proud to have either of you as my successor and inheritor of my quirk, one for all." Shoko's mind was ablaze with a lot of information to process. "What is happening right now?" she asked, eyeing 𝗧𝗑, who was currently staring a hole into his lap, clutching his pants in near tears. If this was any other situation, she would not be giving a single thought in saying yes to All Might and inheriting his quirk for her reasons. But seeing how down in the dumps 𝗧𝗑 was about all of this, she made up her mind. The acknowledgement as possible #1 of her generation was enough for her. "I'll pass." "Excuse me." Shoko looked at 𝗧𝗑 beside, who was in disbelief. "I will pass. In a lot of ways I cannot take you up on your offer." She turned to look at All Might, thinking how crazy it is that there were transferable quirks out there in the world. "Even if I did want to, so much of my own quirk I still don't know yet, so I want to concentrate on that in the time I had before going to Yue." She smiled, turning her head towards 𝗧𝗑. "You should take him up on it, 𝗵𝗃. Every advantage you have before entering Yue is worth the challenge." Shoko spoke, deducing that inheriting the quirk was more important to him than it is to her. 𝗧𝗑 nodded and gave All Might his approval. With that all said and done, do you have any questions for me? The skeletal All Might asked, a question he instantly regretted as his teen charges entered into a barrage of questions. Within half an hour, All Might would explain the origins of One for All as he knew it, the previous user and her relationship to him, the villain that gave him the hole in his torso, and his many exploits over the years. Shoko herself was more interested in the going-on of his career, and Izuku was pretty much on the technical side of his quirk. Although he was taken aback by the intense interrogation, he soon got into it himself, laughing and reverting to his muscular form. Well, if you look at the time, young Midoriya and I should be on our way, he said as All Might looked out the window at a sky bathed in orange as a sign of it being early evening. You have an early morning, young Midoriya. We need to make up for lost time with your training if you are going to make the entrance exams in 9 months. Izuku's face turned from excitement to shock as he had not thought about the exams at all after everything that had happened. Oh yeah, sorry about that, Izuku replied, thinking back to that day 3 weeks ago. To the imposition of both Shoko's and All Might's time, he had wasted what little time he had on this enlightening venture. Not that he will ever tell his fellow inheritor-elect that he had said no to the pro first electing her in his place, though that is a story for another time. He turned to Shoko, now having become comfortable with her presence, as both teens had moments ago been fanboying and fangirling at the stories and experiences of their shared idol. I'm sorry if we took up your time. Getting off the bed, he bowed to her. Thanks to you, I can seriously go after my dream. Thank you very much, Todoroki-san. He raised his head to be met with a look of confusion from the recipient of his gratitude. What do you mean by that? She asked, her face morphing to that of concern. Running his earlier statement through his mind, a figurative light bulb appeared on top of his head, standing up straight and pointing to himself shortly after he chuckled nervously. I am quirkless, so now that I am getting one I can be a hero too. He paused, blushing. Like All Might, and he stopped mid-sentence, looking at Shoko longingly. That statement made it all click for Shoko. He was quirkless, and she had just unknowingly almost crushed his dream. Even if he was willing to part with it, it did not make a difference. She had praised him for being something that he had personally given up on. In a move that mystified the other teen, she bowed to him in return. Izuku was at a loss. What was happening right now? He questioned internally, his eyes searching All Might for answers that were beyond him. Izuku watched the girl raise her head. Thank you. Her near-silent words left her lips. A smile crossed her face, but both gentlemen did not notice it with the wet streaks that decorated her cheeks. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Shoko nodded, giving them a sweet smile. I'm fine. She spoke, wiping at her eyes, but the liquid continued to fall. It got worse when from out of nowhere, All Might took her in an embrace, and she clung to him desperately. Taking a break, Shoko sat in the middle of a featureless room trying to catch her breath. If anyone was to look at her now who had known her from a year ago would be surprised by her sudden growth, now standing a full 17 cm taller. She looked down at a sticky note on her duffel bag next to her, picking it up to read it over again for what she felt was the 100th time. Remember not to overexert yourself, Rook. I am entrusting you with them both, Shoko. Mirai Sasaki. She looked up at the ceiling with one eye wrapped under a bandage, sighing. She had gotten some skin grafting done since the damaged skin under her eye wasn't too extensive, thanks to the former sidekick of All Might. He had also rewritten a recommendation letter for her to the staff of UA, her dream school, claiming that it was the only way that she would be put in 1A, and he stressed the importance of her being put in that class. Shoko wanted to get into the school on her own merit, but being recognized as the future of the hero industry by the #1 and his sidekick made it an offer that she could not refuse. She was exhausted from the workout that she was doing in this room. She had just gotten permission to be able to use her quirk freely again after almost a year, so she was eager to get back to training despite her doctor only allowing her to use it in the facilities that the hospital provided their patients for rehab. Shoko now found it stupid that she could only train her quirk here, but she wasn't complaining. She came every time her sister visited their mother, this being one of those days. Shoko wouldn't see herself out of the fear that whatever Ray saw that day was still there, so much so that she had cut her hair into a simple bob and wanted to dye it to the same platinum the rest of her siblings and mother had. But her sister had none of it. Instead, Fuyumi had complemented its crimson color, making the statement that she shouldn't ruin it because of some grudge, that she should wear it with the pride of being better than Endeavor. Speaking of which, Shoko heard the sounds of someone entering the room and saw her sister walk in. "You are still training, Sho?" Fuyumi questioned as she entered the room. "You should go easy. What if something happened before your physical It's only a couple of days away. You need to rest up." Shoko looked at her sister incredulously. She stood up, closing the rest of the distance to her sister, putting her hands on Fuyumi's shoulders, now taller than her sister. "You have to trust me, I'm fine," she said, letting go and having her arms fall to her sides. "I have been taking it easy for 10 months now, and you could have fooled me." Fuyumi made a point to point out that the room that was nearly pure white when they had arrived had now been covered in burn marks and several indentations and scars from her ice on every visible surface. Shoko looked around, getting Fuyumi's point. She hadn't realized up until now that she had been pushing herself and all that. She felt it would be normal to go as hard as she and her dad did as a kid. It felt only natural. "I guess you are right, Nei-chan. Next time I will take it easy." "Naha." Fuyumi responded, looking her sister straight in the eye. "I am done with you two. There won't be a next time. Not if you are not coming to see Mom." She spoke with a look of frustration on her face. "Huh." Fuyumi poked at her little sister, causing Shoko to back up with her chasing. "You both want to see each other, but neither of you want to take the next step. So I am." She was irate at her mother and sister for avoiding each other. Shoko not wanting to be anywhere near their father was one thing, but this was doing her head in. Before her sister was hospitalized, she was okay with this weird game of chicken of theirs. But now, after Ray had blown up on their father, she was ready to force it entirely. "Do you know why you ended up at this hospital, Sho?" "No." "Mom fought for you." "What?" Fuyumi cooled after seeing the look of terror on her sister's face because of her anger. "Look, when you were in a coma, Dad wanted you to go to a specialist in Korea, but Mom wasn't having it." "Oh." 10 months earlier, in the waiting area of the hospital, Shoko was sent to after her involvement in the slime incident. Ray Todoroki was chewing out her husband. "The hell you are." Ray poked the pro hero in the chest. "I went along with this because you said that you would look after my children, Angie." The mother was now screaming her lungs out. "You said that you would protect her if I did this, and look what happened. You two are not even living in the same house." She starts to beat his chest with a closed fist. 5 years, Angie. I lost 5 fucking years with them. With her and all for what, Angie? You two are not even talking." Ray drops to her knees as she begins to cry. A nurse came over to assist if needed, but Ray shrugged her off and Angie dismissed her. He did not know what to say, so he just watched her as she went through the worst of it. Something about the scene reminded him of the last time he had seen Shoko cry, and it ate at him. "You are very similar." He kneeled and wiped Ray's cheeks with his hands. "You both wear your emotions on your sleeve." "I'm sorry." "Huh. I'm sorry." Angie repeated himself. "I was so focused on the future that I lost sight of the present." A sad smile crossed his face. "You both are so strong, and seeing the footage from today reminded me of that. Just give me more time. I promise I can turn this around. Just a little more and I can fight Das." "No." Ray stopped Angie from speaking while slapping his hands away. "I want a divorce." "What?" "I can't do this anymore, Angie. This is our 4th kid. Whatever you want from me. From us is not there. I don't think it ever was." She looked at her hands while speaking softly. "No talks about a specialist or about Sho leaving the country. After what happened with Tia, I want her to be safe at home, and I want to be there as long as she needs us." "I'm sorry that we couldn't be what you wanted, Angie." Ray looked up to Endeavor with a smile. "I should have said this a long time ago. You should find someone else, someone who can provide you with what you want." With her finishing, Angie was as still as a statue in his hero attire. "We should end this before we lose another child." For seconds that felt like an eternity, Angie just stood there trying to process what happened, fist clenched. "If that's what you want, I will look into it," he said with a near-silent voice. Unbeknownst to the pair, their oldest daughter had unintentionally walked in as they were in mid-conversation. Fuyumi hid behind a wall as she heard her mother yell at her father. She had rushed down here after finding out that Shoko had been hospitalized after leaving her school. "Oh." After explaining the situation to Shoko, after adding some details from what she heard from their mother afterward, Fuyumi could see that her sister was going through a whirlwind of emotions. "Listen, I know it's hard. It doesn't have to be straight away, but you should see her before everything. She is doing all of this for you after all," she said, bringing Shoko into an embrace. I would not know what to say. "That's all right, Sho." Fuyumi giggled, not letting go. "It doesn't matter, as long as you see her, that's all that matters." Shoko thought it over and concluded that she had to go. "All right, next time we come I will see her." She resigned. Fuyumi was over the moon and squeezed tighter. She had half the mind to drag her sister with her kicking and screaming if it came to it. Shoko in her mind inherited her stubbornness from her mother, even though the young adult thought it was all Enji Todoroki's doing, but she was wrong. Fuyumi was glad that Shoko gave in easily, or she would have had to use her trump card to get Shoko to comply, but she did not have to. Fuyumi let out a hum of satisfaction before letting go and speaking. "Are you done for the day?" she questioned, patting the one-eyed girl on the head despite Shoko nearly being a full 3 cm taller, leading to some awkwardness. "Yes, I was just about to pack up." "All right," Fuyumi said, walking over to Shoko's bag. "I will help you. What do you want for dinner?" "I don't know," Shoko replied, confused by Fuyumi's now chipper tone. "Come on, it could be anything you want," Fuyumi said as she picked up Shoko's bag, nearly losing her balance from its weight. Shoko thought about it a little further, coming up with something. "Katsudon," she answered absent-mindedly. Fuyumi chuckled as she joined her sister, preparing to leave. "You have become a real carnivore recently. Is this a workout thing, or—" She paused with a teasing grin. "Shut up, shut up, shut up." Shoko covered her ears, fully knowing what Fuyumi was about to say. "Hey, you are the one who told me about the boy. I still have to meet him though. And when I do, I am going to have a no-hero talk rule in place. Oh, which reminds me." She chuckled as Shoko groaned at her sister while she searched her person for something, pulling out a photograph. "Something to make your time at UA interesting?" She then passed the photo to Shoko. The younger girl nearly had her eyes pop out of her head as she looked down at a candid photo of a younger version of her mother arguing with a familiar blonde muscular boy as he looked to be struggling with some books. "No way," Shoko said in shock. Apparently he was in UA's general course before he got his quirk and moved to the hero course. He was a late bloomer. Fuyumi said as Shoko continued to look at the picture, mystified. "Honestly, how small can this world be?" She then got an idea. "You said that he was going to be a teacher, right?" Shoko nodded with her eyes still glued to the image. "Do you want to help me make the teacher-parent meetings more interesting?" "Wait, what?" Shoko had her senses return, looking up at her sister. "What are you planning?" she asked, narrowing her eyes at her sister. "Mom is going to leave the hospital soon enough, and a little reunion might lift her spirits, you know." Fuyumi winked at her sister, getting a furrowed brow in response. "Oh." After 9 months of harsh training, one 𝗧𝗵𝗲 arrived at the campus of UA, the site of the entrance exams for the school. "I made it," he said, slowing to a walking pace, slightly out of breath. He was glad that he convinced All Might to give him all for one before he had planned, or he might have been in some trouble or worse late. He entered through the front gate with some purpose as he looked up at the imposing building in many respects with some renewed determination. He had to wait for the last day of testing because of his training, but he was fully prepared to tackle this challenge. "In the end, I didn't get to test out the power I received from All Might." He thought back to his training and the studying he was doing in his free time. Although he had begged All Might to give him the quirk early, those two things, his studies, and the training that All Might had forbade him from using one for all, eating up his time. Out of the way, though. The spiky-haired blonde from the slime incident got his attention with some annoyance to his tone. "Kaken, don't stand in my way. I'll kill you," Kaken said with his hands in their middle school's uniform pockets. Surprised, Izuku began a frightened greeting with his arms in front of him, frantically waving. "A morning. Let's both do our best." He was surprised when Kaken ignored him entirely. Ever since the slime incident, the boy he considered a childhood friend had done just that. Although both he and their parents considered him his friend, Kaken was the exact opposite. He, however, considered this turn of events a blessing as he sighed and followed the same path to the school. He did not get far, however. Tripping on his foot, he flew forward not before he felt a hand graze his back. He had fallen into something soft, knocking it over, his hands out in front of him. Izuku looked down at what he had run into, coming eye to eye, it being a familiar face. Not fully realizing the situation he was in, a feminine voice squeaked and offered the pair a quick apology. "I'm sorry, I was not fast enough to stop him." The statement was met with Izuku floating over the other person, a girl he had met nearly a year ago, with his hands on her bust, fully groping her. Izuku, in his panic, squeezed her above-average-sized breasts. "I know you miss me, Midoriya, but there has to be a better way of saying hi." The crimson-haired girl spoke with a light blush while underneath him. "You mind?" she asked him, turning her head away from him, arms sprawled out at either side of her head. Both teens heard the word release before Izuku was suddenly dropped on top of the redhead, both letting out groans of pain. Izuku was the first to recover. His panic returned, still feeling her chest overflow his hands and her being closer to his face. Fully comprehending what happened, a synchronized apology came out of Izuku and the other girl behind him. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Izuku quickly got off and backed away. "It's all right." The redhead got up, standing to her full height in the process. "It's not like it was on purpose, right?" she said as she walked over to Izuku, offering a hand to help him up. "It's been a while, Midoriya." It took a moment of examining the crimson-haired girl's appearance before he had recognized her. "Todoroki-san?" Izuku questioned as he got a smile from the girl, her not waiting for him to grab her hand, taking his instead. "Took you long enough. Nice meeting you again," Shoko said with a bright smile. "You two know each other?" the other girl questioned as the pair also took notice of her. A brunette stood before them as she examined them. Although Izuku was in his school uniform, Shoko was not, and she rightfully had guessed that they didn't belong to the same school. "Oh, hello." Shoko was the first to respond as Izuku was in his own world. "Yes, you are right. We have been well acquainted for some time. I am Shoko Todoroki, by the way." Shoko looked at the other girl expectantly. "All right. Ochako Uraraka is my name." The other girl blushed and chuckled. "And you are?" "Midoriya, right?" Ochako looked at Izuku, who was staring blankly into space. It took Shoko nudging him to get his attention, as the boy looked like he was about to explode with how red his head was. Izuku. "Izuku Midoriya," Izuku said, introducing himself. "Well, it's nice to meet you. I guess you're nervous." She began walking, prompting both Shoko and Izuku to follow. "So, are you here for the exam for the hero course?" Shoko asked Ochako. The other girl nervously chuckled before. "Yeah, what about you?" Shoko did not know what to say. Although she was here for an evaluation, she had already been accepted through her role as a recommendation student, so she decided to stick to the truth. "Not really, although I am here for the practical exam, I have been already enrolled as a recommendation student," she said, scratching her cheek. "Oh, really? Did something happen that you had to come today?" Ochako questioned. "Yeah, I was in the hospital earlier, and my doctor had not cleared me to participate in anything in time for the test, including the others, though I was able to do the written portion." She paused as if remembering something. "I just remembered that I have to see someone beforehand." The others were then taken off guard as Shoko took off running before shouting back at them. "Good luck, you two, see you later." She waved before disappearing through the building's entrance. Ochako then turned to Izuku, wishing good fortune to the both of them. "Let's do our best." Name: Shoko Todoroki. Age 15, December 3th. Hero alias: None. TBD. Quirk: Supernovae. Shoko possesses a unique quirk that grants her control over fire and ice. She can manipulate heat and temperature within a range of 600 to 800 meters. This ability allows her to generate and control flames that can reach temperatures of up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, as well as create icy constructs that approach near absolute zero. Shoko's quirk evolves to allow her to control temperature-based phenomena and even manipulate heat on a molecular level. With fair skin and a striking red shoulder-length bob cut, Shoko's appearance reflects her internal strength and determination. Her heterochromatic eyes, one icy blue and the other fiery amber, are emblematic of her dual heritage. Raised by her older sister Fuyumi, since the age of 9, she is determined to carve her own path in the world of heroes and escape her father's shadow. Shoko's enthusiasm for heroism remains unwavering, as does her fervent sense of justice. Described as spirited and assertive, she possesses the determination to stand up for what's right. Shoko's quirk, Supernovae, is a manifestation of her inner strength and her desire to establish her identity as a hero. As she navigates the challenges of becoming a pro-hero, Shoko's admiration for true heroes guides her actions and decisions. Shoko's complex family dynamics have significantly impacted her life. Her strained relationship with her father, 𝗵𝗏𝗧, and her mother's absence have left emotional scars. The hospitalization following her encounter with a villain marks a pivotal moment. As she confronts her past and embarks on a journey of personal growth, Shoko's interactions with her sister, 𝗵𝗃, become integral in shaping her character. 𝗧𝗏 had finished the written portion of the exams and was headed toward the auditorium for the briefing on the next portion. The exams so far were surprising, at least the written exams. He was fully prepared for them to be tougher, not that he was complaining. Maybe the boy overprepared for them, but that's neither here nor there. His true test was just about to begin here now at the auditorium. He found a seat a couple of seats down from Kaken and nervously awaited the explanation of the next stage with all of the UA hopefuls. For all you examinees, listeners tuning in, welcome to the show today. Everybody say hey. The several hundred in attendance were so silent that a dropped pin could be heard, all but 𝗧𝗏, who was trying not to fanboy at the sight of the pro-hero getting the attention of the students near him and a soft giggle from somewhere out of his field of vision. This caused the boy in his embarrassment to pay closer attention to the blonde spiky-headed pro and his presentation. Tough crowd, the hero muttered. What a refined response. The man added, moving animatedly around the stage. Then I will be quick, my dear listeners. Here is the rundown on the next part of the exams. He continued as a large 15mm screen flickered to life. Are you ready? Yeah. The hero tried again to get the audience to participate, but as before there was nothing but silence. / the voice hero present mic. Wow. I listened to him every week on his radio show. / before 𝗧𝗏 could continue, a blonde boy with what looked like a flesh-colored tail nudged him with his arm, bringing the opposite to his lips to shush 𝗧𝗏. The action caused 𝗧𝗏 to sink in his seat a little, only now realizing that he was muttering to himself while gushing at the appearance of present mic. Sorry. 𝗧𝗏 finished while going back to paying attention to the hero. As it says in the application requirements, you listeners are to take part in a 10-minute urban mock battle simulation. You can bring whatever you want. The screen displayed the campus of the school on a city map with a square over it with "You're here" over top of it. After the presentation, you will head out to the specified area on your application, boxes with the letters A to G appearing on the map with dotted lines connected to each from the school. 3 different types of faux villains will appear at each station battle. You will earn points depending on the type, separated by overall difficulty. The image zoomed into one of the lettered boxes with the silhouettes of what appeared to be armored robots on either side with different numerical point values ranging from 0 to 3. The 0 pointer caught 𝗧𝗏's attention and how bulky it looked compared to the others, but he did not have the time to dwell with the presentation continuing. Your assignment, dear listeners, is to use what method you wish to immobilize each faux villain. Of course, attacking others and any unheroic actions are strictly prohibited and will result in an instant failure. May I ask a question? A dark-haired teen in glasses raised his hand, getting present mic's attention, sitting 2 rows down from 𝗧𝗏. Okay. The pro responded. Pointing at the screen with a printout in his hands, the boy began speaking. In the printout we received, as well as the diagram on the screen, shows a 4th type that you have not mentioned. I assume that this is not a mistake on the part of the most prominent school in Japan. Otherwise it should be ashamed of this foolish mistake. We examinees are here in this place because we wish to be molded into exemplary heroes. Turning around, he pointed to 𝗧𝗏. In addition, you over there curly hair, you have been muttering the whole time. He became more serious as 𝗧𝗏 pointed to himself in mild confusion. Could you stop? It's distracting. He finished, narrowing his eyes. If you are here on a pleasure trip, then you should leave immediately. That statement rubbed 𝗧𝗏 and one other person the wrong way as the boy in glasses continued. Although 𝗧𝗏 did not let it show on his face, the head of Crimson that sat adjacent to Kaken had a clear scowl on her face, which was noticed by her seatmate, the brunetto Choco. Is everything alright, Todoroki-san? The girl asked, feeling the temperature drop a few degrees in the building. I'm fine, Uraraka. Shoko whispered back, getting the hairs on the back of the other girl's neck to stand on end. Though the girl's tone was neutral, Something in Ochako warned her not to investigate further, and turned back to the boy in glasses trying to decipher what his question was. There's one every year. 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝐼𝐴 thought to himself, trying to find a way to calm the situation down. Okay, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 7111. Thanks for the great message, but I was actually about to get on that subject. The image on the screen zoomed into the 0 pointer. The fourth type of villain is worth 0 points. This guy is an obstacle, so to speak. The image zoomed out, focusing on all of the villain silhouettes. An obstacle that will go crazy in tight spaces. It's not impossible to beat, but there is no reason to beat it either. The smile on the pro's face disappeared as his expression became more serious. I recommend that you listeners try to avoid it. Thank you very much, sorry for the intrusion. 7111 said before taking his seat again. That's all, my listeners. Lastly, I will give you all a present in our school motto. The hero Napoleon Bonaparte once said, "A true hero is someone who overcomes misfortunes in life. Go beyond. Plus ultra." Several faces that he could see seemed to take his closing statement to heart, if their smiles were anything to go by. Now, everyone, good luck suffering. Oh. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 got off of a bus that had UA hopefuls on. He was assigned to Area B for his mock exams. Now that he was here, he had a nervous energy about him. This would be the first time that he will be using his quirk since getting it from All Might. He found a spot to himself near the sectioned off test site in an attempt to stop him from hyperventilating. Letting out a short breath, he sighed, looking at his surroundings. From what he thought, unlike the written portion of the exams, he did not see any familiar faces in the crowd of students. Some relief took over him when none of the faces that he could see were not from his school. So they don't want us to help our friends, not that I have anyone to help me. He confirmed to himself as he continued to scan through the sea of faces near the gate of a 35 tall wall surrounding Site B. That's when his eyes caught the sight of crimson hair, a smile traveling to his face. She is here too. I should probably say hi. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 thought, catching the sight of Shoko in his peripherals. Though that was the plan, a hand stopped him, grabbing his shoulder from behind, and he froze in place. The voice of 7111 entered his ears as 𝗧𝗂𝐴 turned around. That girl looks like she is trying to focus. They both looked at Shoko, who was currently on her own in sweatpants, a pair of goggles strapped to her forehead, and a t-shirt with the sleeves rolled up, stretching with an earbud in. What are you doing here? After the ruckus you caused earlier, are you taking the entrance exams to interfere with others? Ruckus. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 thought before remembering where he was, shrinking under 7111 gaze. And no, of course not. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 raised his hands in mock surrender. Some of the others got wind of the confrontation, noticing 𝗧𝗂𝐴's almost submissive body language. They thanked their lucky stars for the fact that 𝗧𝗂𝐴 seemed harmless, even though 𝗧𝗂𝐴 was taking the exam for the hero course as they were. I feel that the others think they lucked out because I'm here. After a second, 𝗧𝗂𝐴 brought his hands level to his cheeks, closing his eyes. Too bad for them. He thought as his mother, All Might, and Shoko's images, and among them silhouettes of 7 other people, crossed his mind before an audible slap was heard. For the observers, a shock was felt as they saw their fellow examinee slap himself in the face. Not only that, but the fact his hands were giving a faint glow from red markings on them that appeared from nowhere. Before anyone could comment, however, the voice of 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝐼𝐴 filled the dead air. Okay, start. Every person looked to the top of the wall as 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝐼𝐴 appeared near the now opening gate. What are you waiting for? A countdown. Go. Run. 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 It took a couple of seconds for the words to register, but every person began charging towards the gate. The first person 𝗧𝗂𝐴 saw crossing the threshold was Shoko, flying under the power of the fire that engulfed her arms. He watched as she flew up the side of the nearest building before disappearing over its rooftop. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 himself was in a dead sprint, passing up some of the less physically able persons. Entering the area, he noticed that he was a little lighter on his feet than usual. Entering the city street of Area B, he was almost hit in the side by a large metallic arm, but at the last moment, he dived for it as if on instinct, sliding forward a few meters before coming to a stop on the road ahead on his stomach. Quickly getting up, he came to what looked like a camera with a robot. The long neck, human torso, and wheel of a lower half combo bot put its fist up as if readying itself for a fight, and 𝗧𝗂𝐴 found himself doing the same, seeing the one painted on the bot's gauntlet-like arms matching the one-pointer silhouette. Of course, it wasn't going to be that easy. he thought, as the one-pointers will start at a burnout. At least he knew that he could react to its punches, as one of the one-pointer fists flew past his head while he dodged. Mid-dodging, he noticed that the force of its punches made it awkward on its singular wheel, and its turning radius was almost non-existent. Getting an idea, he took off running past it, in turn dodging a poorly placed punch. He smiled as he turned a corner on the nearest side street and saw a parked car that blocked most of the street ahead of him in the narrow side street. Not thinking twice, he hopped on the hood, jumped on the car roof, and waited for the robot to catch up. The bot quickly entered the side street without hesitation. 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 waited until the last moment after the bot had swung its fist at him, but 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 wasn't there. The sound of twisting metal could be heard as the gauntlet-like fist sank into the roof of the car, getting stuck halfway through while 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 slid off the trunk of the car. Landing on the concrete on the other side, 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 did not have time to process, as the torso of the one-point landed in front of him in a heap, missing one of its arms. What? He questioned as he turned around, looking back at the mouth of the side street, seeing a fancily dressed boy waving at him with a glow from his gaudy belt dimming. "Thank you for the distraction, that is. We make a good team now." The boy ran his hand through his hair while speaking before uttering his last words, running away from the scene. "Though I don't think we will meet again." "What?" The audible sound left 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳's lips as he returned to the corpse of the one-pointer. "I guess we can't share points," he thought as he examined the wreckage. He noticed that at the point of the robot's bisection were burn marks, and what looked like a clean cut. This, combined with the fact that the other boy's belt had the buckle's crystal dim, led 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 to believe that the other boy's quirk was some sort of laser. Not wanting to be stuck thinking about what may be, he looked further into the remains of the one-pointer, looking for any weaknesses that he could exploit. Looking over the torso, he found a big red button on the robot's back that could be used to shut it off, though he had no clue or the time to test it. He decided it was best to leave the side street and hopefully find another one-pointer to test his theory. A computerized voice announced what sounded like several locations at once: the remaining time in the exam. 8 minutes remaining. 8 minutes remaining. That announcement had the effect of having 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳 kick himself for wasting 2 minutes with nothing but a potential weakness to show. Making up his mind, he took off towards the back of Area B. With any luck, there were more villains the further, and that went untouched by the mob of students. As he ran, he came across others, and what he heard caused his heart to sink. From the way they were speaking, most people were in their late teens/early 20s in points, and he had nothing to show for it, and that went on for several minutes. 6 minutes. 6 minutes remaining. At this point, all of 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐳's muscles burned, and he had more than a couple of bruises he had picked up from the robots that complemented his tiredness. He was now covered in sweat, causing him to take off the jacket of the tracksuit he was wearing and tie it to his waist, taking a breather in the process. From the corner of his eye, he spotted 𝗂𝐴𝐻𝐿 lifting several robots with her gravity quirk before dropping them from a great height, with her fingertips claiming each other after slapping each robot with her palm. A bout of unease entered his mind when she spoke, taking off and running away from the area they were both in. "That's 28 points." 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐻 had what he would like to think as a mild heart attack at how far behind he thought he was, only targeting one-pointer for his 6 points, and this was him pushing himself to the limit of what he thought he could manage without one for all. He has to thank All Might after this, thinking, even if he does not get into UA, that the training was worth it. Not wanting to think about it more, he returned to work, this time adding 2 pointers to the menu. 2 minutes remaining. After crossing paths with the girl he had met at the entrance of 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 had told himself to stop worrying about the points, focusing on getting as many as he could and relying on the written exam to carry him past the start line of his future career. But in a cruel twist of fate, he heard what sounded like a large explosion in the distance, with its shockwave and a dust cloud knocking him off his perch and throwing him violently to the ground. Sore and coughing his lungs up, 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐻 was slow to get up as he noticed a large, colossal robot about 40 m in height, towering over even the sparse 4-story buildings, looking down on the fleeing students. "This isn't funny, is that the 0-pointer?" 𝗧𝗂𝐻 is slow to get up, all things considered. It was a struggle, but he had to get a safe distance away. No one stopped to help, however. As the task was almost too grueling, he saw 7111 run past him, smiling at what looked like exhaust pipes on the other boy's calf muscles. 𝗧𝗂𝐻 looked back at the 0-pointer, seeing it slowly move towards the fleeing students. That's when he caught it. The sight of the girl he had just met earlier today, trapped under a chunk of rubble, pinning her to the ground. A switch inside him was flipped as he took off in the opposite direction of everyone else. He had the same butterflies as he did the same day he ran towards his friend in the slime incident 10 months ago. He hated the feeling. I hope you are right about this, Tashinori-san. He whispered to himself, thinking back to what All Might had said when he first received One for All. There will come a time when you think that something is not worth the effort. Izuku was now running towards the 0-pointer. But that's the moment you will have to create an opportunity for it to shine brightly. As he entered the dust that had not settled from the explosion, red lightning covered his body as he ran faster, lighting his movements for the now onlookers and the other students. Clench your butt cheeks. Let it rise to the surface. He bent his knees and jumped with enough force to create an indentation on the surface of the street, displacing the fog of dirt and rubble in the immediate area. He primed a fist in preparation for the head of the robot that was nearly within arm's reach. And yell this from your heart. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Izuku screamed as he heard very audible cracks as he followed through with his punch. The surface of what could be the robot's face shattered on contact with Izuku's fist, falling backward. In that moment, with the conditions the same as when he faced the slime this time around, he felt a sense of relief. He was proud. He had finally been given the chance to save someone, at least for the moment. A smile crossed his face with heavy eyelids watching the 0-pointer fall, and not a second later, whatever was driving his second wind ran out and pain took over all his senses. It was blinding and Izuku was not able to cope, blacking out. Shouts of shock and worry filled the air as his body began to plummet to the ground 40 m below. In the cacophony of voices, he was able to pick up two distinct voices. Midoriya. Midoriya-san. With the last of his energy, he struggled to open his eyes. Getting the sensation that he was floating, he saw Shoko above him, holding out her hands, seemingly chanting something under her breath, a ball of blue flame lighting the sky behind her, seeing one of the 7 figures he saw in his mind with her mimicking her action. He raised the opposite arm to the arm that had punched the 0-pointer, 3 black tendrils sprouting from it, closing the distance between them. 2 minutes remaining. Shoko Todoroki had spent most of the exam traversing from rooftop to rooftop in the area, picking off whatever faux villain she could from her vantage points before anyone could get to them, goggles over her eyes as she flew from place to place. Hearing the sound of the voice announced the rest of the time let her pause in her actions. The fact that she only had 2 minutes had filled her with a sense of relief. Unlike the other examinees, she was not taking the exam to pass, but to have the staff of UA evaluate her as they were able to with the other recommendation students, so she could stop at any time if she wanted to. However, as her sister Fuyumi confirmed, Shoko did not know how to stop and take it easy. So as time elapsed from her count was one of Site B's top students with her villain points well in the 50s. Not long after the 2-minute warning, Shoko decided to stop and rest until the time ran out, and with that she made a mistake. Not far north from the location where she was, an explosion leveled several buildings near the center of Area B. With the explosion came a giant robot standing well over 40 m tall. Remembering that she had seen both Ochako and Izuku near the starting area, she jumped into action using her Quirk supernovae to propel her forward, a bright orange flame emitting from her arms. Once she got to the area around the robot, she could not see anything ground level with a thick fog of dust covering the streets for blocks on end. Deciding it was best, the girl clicked her tongue, increasing the strength of her flames to gain altitude to hover above the 0-pointer. Her mind raced for a solution to somehow stop the 0-pointer without much collateral damage, so she could look for those two unabated. Before she could, however, her eyes followed a flash of red light, and before she knew it, Izuku burst forth from the cloud with a determined look on his face, clearing the dust from the immediate area. She watched as the boy became level with the robot very quickly, and heard him shout from the top of his lungs the name of their shared hero's signature move, the punch, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. In awe, she watches the inheritor of One for All drop a 40 m tall robot with a single punch. Then her awe became terror as the boy, whom she had met a handful of times, plummeted unresponsive to the ground. Her orange flames became blue as she followed after him. With the increase in the strength of her flames, she rocketed towards him to catch up. Midoriya. She shouted over the wind, trying to get him to open his eyes. She could see from the distance between them that his right arm as well as both of his legs were broken. She extended out her left hand, stopping the flame emitting from it to grab whatever she could to use her quirk to slow both their descents. At the same time, Ochako was floating up from the wreckage of the 0-pointer, meeting the other teens halfway with her arm extended from a piece of the 0-pointer's armor. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏. She shouted almost in unison with Shoko, making contact with Izuku's shirt just in time for Shoko to catch up with him, missing the black tendrils that had wrapped around Shoko's arm. Not questioning the most recent development with the tendrils, Shoko let herself be pulled by them into Izuku's bubble. Not a moment later, she stopped producing flames altogether. Shifting her body, she was able to switch positions with Izuku so that she was the one level with the ground and not him. Holding him protectively to her chest, she started producing a cocoon of ice. Sorry, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏. It's about to get really cold. Just bear with it for just a little while, alright? She spoke, burying his face into her chest as the cocoon completed itself. Ochako, seeing this, brought her hands together, softly speaking the word release, in mild discomfort as she gently descended to the ground. She wasn't the first to reach it, as the other two in the ice cocoon crashed to the ground, creating a large crater where it landed. Ochako, not giving a second thought, got off of the Zero-Pointer's armor as soon as it landed and ran toward the crater. Seeing that the other two seemed to have made it with no visible injury caused Ochako to collapse at its mouth, sighing before regurgitating her breakfast. Time. As for the other two, Izuku was lying on top of Shoko, both unconscious, the black tendrils that he had produced retreating into his arm. After several seconds, sirens filled the air, and 4 human-sized robots entered the scene, causing everyone other than Ochako to clear the way. An older woman under 135 centimeters blasted past the students, followed by a tall blonde woman in a lab coat and red eyes focused on the crater. Please get out of the way. Out of the way. Can't you see that this is an emergency? The pair made it to the unconscious teens, making sure they were okay. The blonde woman was at Shoko's side in mere seconds, checking her vitals. She sighed in relief when she found a pulse and Shoko still breathing under her power. You are going to give me a heart attack one of these days, Shoko? She spoke softly, stripping herself of her lab coat and draping it over Shoko's form after she and Izuku were separated. In the activating of Supernova's ice, the girl's top was the only victim, as there was pretty much nothing left of it mostly only covering her modesty at this point. As for Izuku, he was not in the best shape. The elderly short woman had just finished resetting Izuku's legs shortly after laying him on his back, and she instructed the robots to keep the boy still. She moved Izuku's forehead and kissed him. For a second, the onlookers wondered what the kiss to the forehead meant, but were surprised as Izuku's arm snapped back into place. The teen pair was loaded up on stretchers as an ambulance backed up near the crater. As they were moved to be put into the vehicle, Ochako stopped the 2 doctors who helped them and asked them what came to mind as she watched. Can I come with them? The doctors looked at each other and then at the teen, prompting her to explain further. Even though I just met them today, he sacrificed himself to save me, and I want to make sure that they are both okay. She finished speaking and playing with her hands. If you don't mind it being a tight fit, I don't mind. You? The elderly woman asked the other, getting a shake of the head. All right, come along, dearie. The 3 entered the ambulance shortly after she finished. All Might, who was watching the exams take place with the other youth. A faculty looked at the screen in a low-light observatory, dumbfounded. He had wanted to jump into action, fighting every bone in his body to do just that. On the screen in front of him and the other teachers of the school were his 2 successor-elects to fall to the pavement below them in an ice cocoon from a 40m drop, and in the chaos, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 did something that he thought was impossible. He knew that there were one for all users that had quirks before they had it passed down to them, but neither he nor his predecessor had shown any sign of any other quirk than one for all strength enhancer. Though he knew that it was the case that the power got stronger with each user, this, however, was beyond his wildest dreams. As the cocoon slammed into the ground, All Might couldn't help to revert into his muscular form, surprising the members of the staff around him. Is there something wrong, Toshinori? A bear-like mouse dog hybrid in a suit asked him, watching All Might get up from his seat to leave. Nothing, Principal Nizu. I just need some air, All Might said without much fanfare. Nizu took a few measured looks at All Might before letting him leave. Make sure you are back soon. We have to do the final evaluation, remember? You are still one of the 6 who will look over the footage, and you will be one of the staff who will be recording the acceptance letters for Class A. The principal got a non-verbal response, watching the pro leave the room with a wave. He should be more careful. He is being too obvious. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗏 and Shoko Todorokiya? He could have done worse as far as favorites go. The man thought to himself, turning back to the screen. Alright, bring up the exams of 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 𝐔𝐸𝐵 and Hitoshi Shinso. Knowing who the homeroom teacher for Class A is this year, we might have some seats to fill in his class. Hopefully, they don't disappoint. Oh. Midoriya, do we have to? Todoroki, yes, Mr. Late Bloomer, we have to. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, I am with Midoriya-san on this. We have no idea if either of us made it anyway. Todoroki, come on, of course you guys got accepted to UA 𝗬𝗏𝗏. But I do admit that I have been pushing you guys, and for that I am sorry. Todoroki, you know what? Let's just hang out on the weekend. What do you say? 𝗬𝗏𝗏, 𝗬𝗏𝗏, what's the catch? Todoroki, no catch. Everyone needs their rest every once in a while. And you two are my only friends, Sue. Midoriya, well, I don't know about you, 𝗬𝗏𝗏, but I am in. It's better than feeling bad for myself. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, I hate you guys, you know that. Todoroki, I have been told. Midoriya, you don't have to if you don't want to come. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, traitor. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, fine, you win. But if there is even a hint of exercise, I am leaving. Todoroki, as I said, rest? What happens after that happens? Oh. Izuku could not help but smile at the banter he was having with his new friends in a group chat on his phone's messenger app. Friends, he liked the sound of that. For almost all of his childhood, he did not have what you could call friends. But 1 month after the entrance exams to his dream school, he could say that his handful of contacts on his phone had nearly doubled. It was a good sign for things to come, but unlike Shoko, he wasn't as confident that he had gotten into UA. Though he wasn't sure that he had made it, he wasn't unhappy with the results. After he had woken up in the school's infirmary, he quickly found out what had happened after he had beat the 0-pointer. He had awakened a second quirk. After using one for all for what he thought was the time he had awoken a secondary quirk, at first he did not believe it. What took him studying the exact moment he was saved by Ochako and Shoko several times was now burned into his memory. Thinking of the moment he lifted his arm, the same left arm that those 3 black tendrils came out of, and aimed at the fence that surrounded his middle school rooftop, nothing happening. He looked at his hand, trying to figure out how to call on that power again. Only if I can get into contact with Toshinori-san, he silently said to himself, thinking. All Might had been radio silent ever since the exams concluded. Izuku had a list of questions for One for All's predecessor, and it grew by the day. He had no idea what to think about his new powers or how he could go about mastering them. From what All Might told him, One for All was a strength-enhancing emitter-type quirk that had been transferred from person to person over time, all the while getting stronger. He has to confirm this, but he has a theory. That theory is that if what summoned those black tendrils wasn't some dormant quirk of his, and would mean he had access to every One for All user's quirk, meaning he had multiple quirks outside the 2 he had now. Sitting on the rooftop of his school, he could not help but get excited at the prospect. Leaning back on the wall of the entrance to the roof, he let out a content smile before feeling the buzz of his phone in his right hand. Oh. Todoroki, same time and place as usual? 𝗬𝗏𝗏, no training. Todoroki, who do you think I am, 𝗬𝗏𝗏? Of course we're not going to train. Todoroki, I am a woman of my word. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, tell that to all of the bruises you gave me all month. Todoroki, it's not my fault that you and Midoriya had no combat experience before the exams. We are training to be heroes. Remember, the least you can do is to learn to defend yourself without your quirk. 𝗬𝗏𝗏, 𝗬𝗏𝗏, fine, I will believe you for now. That works for me. I saw a store nearby that I wanted to check out. Todoroki, great. What about you, Midoriya? Oh. Izuku was about to answer, but looking down at his phone, something overloaded his senses with pending danger if he stayed stationary. Dropping his phone, he let his instincts take over and moved away from his post with haste. A cry of pain forced him to regain his senses. Looking at where he had been stationary moments ago, he saw the forms of Kaken's lackeys standing meters away. One was holding his fist in clear pain, and the other, a winged boy, stood looking at Izuku dumbfounded. The winged boy could not help but be amazed at what Izuku just accomplished. Just a second ago, Izuku was so engrossed in his cell phone that he did not notice the other 2 boys enter the school roof and approach him from the door. That is when the injured boy extended his fingers to an inhuman degree to flick the distracted Izuku on the forehead, but somehow had enough time to dodge the flick, getting up, and gain what was 1m distance from the other 2 before the injured boy could complete the flicking motion, slamming the finger into the wall Izuku was leaning on. What do you want? Izuku asked the 2 drones, who stared dumbfounded. Your precious 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗧𝗏 is not here, and I would appreciate it if you leave, 𝐒𝐬𝐽 said with a shocking amount of mirth. Normally he would not be this forward, but something in him couldn't let things be. Ever since his wayward childhood friend had started to leave him alone, it was the same time these two followers started ramping up their bullying, and he had enough of it. It was one thing that he could not use one for all without hurting himself nor get the second quirk to work at all. It was another to have his little moments of peace interrupted by what he and 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 considered extras at this point. You got some nerve, Deku. The boy that had flicked the wall said, staring a hole at 𝐒𝐻𝐽. 𝗧𝗏 hated that name. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲's insistence on using it was one thing, because it in itself was his own way to acknowledge 𝗧𝗏. Though he did not mind his childhood friend using it, he couldn't overlook it. The boy was using the nickname with the definition a 5-year-old made up, a nickname meant to put him down as useless. After gaining friends who believed that he would be able to achieve his dreams along as the #1 hero, that was something that he can't abide by. He let out a snarl when the winged boy picked up his phone. Dude, check this out. Captain Useless over here is really on his high horse. Hey, give that back. 𝗧𝗏 let out a barely audible word of protest. His streak of retreating into himself showed itself. He may now talk to his new friends more naturally than he had when he first met them. It did not mean he had changed all that much. Tears started to form as the two boys went through the messages. Not bad, Deku. These are some babes you got there. I don't know how a useless loser like you got them to text you like this, but you wouldn't mind if we crushed your date, would you? The winged boy didn't wait for a response before typing away in the chat. He wouldn't mind. We do go way back after all. The other boy said, taking down the two girls' information. Which one do you want? The brunette is pretty cute. Oh. Midoriya. Sounds great, Todoroki. You wouldn't mind if I brought along some friends from school? Oh. Not before long the phone buzzed in the lackey's hand. Well, that was fast, he said, looking down at the incoming messages. Oh. Todoroki. Uraraka? Todoroki. And who are you supposed to be? Midoriya. I'm sorry, what does that mean? Uraraka. It means who are you? Because you sure are not 𝗧𝗏 Midoriya. 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 Of course I am. What has gotten into you guys? Todoroki. I don't know if either you are stupid or illiterate, but you had better not have hurt him if even a hair was misplaced. I swear to all that is all might that I will find you. And you won't like it when I do. Uraraka. Aldra Junior High. Todoroki. Thank you, Uraraka. Oh, see you after school, fake Midoriya. Oh, what the hell? The winged lackey proclaimed, looking at the responses to his little purposely vague answer. What the hell did you tell them, you useless? He dropped the phone after that statement, raising his foot to stomp and destroy it. At that moment, 𝗧𝗏 eyed the phone as it dropped, not that either lackey was paying him any mind at this point. Dude, what the fuck? The other lackey vocalized. This dumb asshole is not worth the effort. It's not like he is going to say anything. Why, what did they say? The second lackey was cut off by 𝗧𝗏's shout to stop, but they both completely ignored him. At that moment, 𝗧𝗏 Midoriya was back in that place again, the place he was in a year ago. He was nothing, and his existence was a mere hindrance to everyone. The high he got using one for all was gone, and he was too much of a coward in his mind to try everything he could to make his second quirk a viable solution until he had mastered the #1 hero's quirk. But that was a momentary thought. The winged boy's foot dropped in the middle of the argument that the other two were having without 𝗧𝗏 realizing, trying to complete the stomping motion. That put him back in the present to reach out to the phone, to his friends, as if his very life depended on it. He did not know what the lackey with wings said to them, but he couldn't end it like every time he tried to make a friend, so he begged. He begged to himself to get up again using whatever quirk that would let him get his phone. Just like that, a singular black mass jutted from beneath 𝗧𝗏's uniform sleeve and wrapped itself around the winged lackey's leg. 𝗧𝗏 could not believe what he was seeing. He got his second quirk to work after a month of trying and failing, and he wasn't alone either. The want-to-be bullies couldn't believe it either. The once quirkless Deku was now in possession of a quirk. Deku. The boy with the extending finger said, not able to finish his thought. Don't call me that. 𝗧𝗏 said in an unconvincing fashion, his shyness showing itself in the most unwelcomed circumstances. I am seeing things right. No way loser Deku has a quirk, right? As if confirming the winged boy's suspicion, 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴 tugged at the tendril, causing the other boy to lose his balance and land on his back right on his red wings. A cry of pain could be heard as 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴 let go of the boy's leg, the tendril wrapping around his phone in the process before retreating to him. The Quirk wasn't as dexterous as he was using his hands, so it was going to take some time to get used to. Not that he was complaining, he had plenty of time to figure it out along with One for All. He was just happy that he had something that he could improve on without an emergency room visit. Looking up at his tormentors, he saw that the second boy still had his phone in his hands, remembering that the boy had taken something down on it. Lifting and summoning other tendrils from his opposite arm, he took the other phone from him. As both phones were in his hands, he looked down at his and frowned at the shattered screen, then at the other phone, deepening the form at his friends' names and contact information written clear as day. A thought ran through his head as he stared daggers at the other two. If he left things as they were, these two would definitely target Shoko and Ochako next, and he did not want that outcome, and that left him with one option. Copying the mannerisms and demeanor of his childhood friend while closing the distance in between him and the others. "I am sick of this shit," he said coldly, thinking that if they wanted their leader back, they could have him in this moment. Grabbing the one still stunned on his feet by the collar, he spoke softly in a threatening manner. "For so long I have put up with this shit. What the fuck did I ever do to you?" He got no answer but started talking regardless. "Why was my being quirkless so offensive to you?" "Listen, 𝗏-, the boy was cut off by a glare. "Those were fucking rhetorical. You fucking dumbass." Red lightning surrounded him for a quick second before disappearing. "You are here to shut up and listen. What would you have done to me if I didn't use my quirk, huh? What would you have done to my friends?" He asked the boy, knowing full well what would have happened. He was fully aware of his friend's looks after all, and it made him sick thinking about what would happen and if it was because of him. "You two want to be heroes, right?" He knew them for over a decade at this point, and he knew exactly what their dreams for the future were, not that he could put a name to both of them. "Don't you think that bullying a classmate for no other reason than that his quirkless would look pretty bad for any of the top hero schools, let alone the public, if you do become heroes? I could ruin you for the rest of your miserable lives if I wanted." Deku pleaded. Again he was cut off by 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴, but this time 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴's quirk, the black tendrils, crept down 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴's arm to wrap around the boy's neck while the other one watched. "What part of shut up don't you understand?" He gave the other boy's neck a little squeeze. "I have faced much worse than you without a quirk, and I'm going to do so long after you are gone from my memory. So here is what we are going to do. You are going to go home, you are going to forget everything we have said and done to each other, and if I see you anywhere near those girls or me, you are going to regret it." He let go of the boy. "Now, go before I do something unheroic." The two of them gasped, and the winged boy was already leaving at this point. The one with extending fingers looked at 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴 expectedly, not getting anything but a cold look. He spoke. "Can I get my phone back at least?" 𝗧𝗂𝐬𝐴 looked at him like the boy offended him. "Are you serious?" His voice started to waver before showing the lackey his phone. "Were you going to give mine back?" "Please, Deku." 𝗧𝗂𝐴 sighed before responding. "So all of that, and you can't do one thing that I've asked, can you?" 𝗧𝗂𝐴 looked into the other boy's eyes with a bit of sadness in his. "Whatever, man." 𝗧𝗂𝐴 continued, taking out the aforementioned phone. Without another word, he showed it to the other boy, who nodded before casually tossing it towards the entrance, it bouncing a couple of times, shattering the screen. "Fetch," 𝗧𝗂𝐴 said calmly before it came to a stop in front of the boy with wings. The second lackey looked at him pissed before walking away. 𝗧𝗂𝐴 waited for them to leave the roof unmoving before he could relax. Taking a deep breath, he dropped to his knees, looking at his shaking hands in relief. That act was a little much for him. He could not believe he had actually pulled it off. Acting like his childhood friend wasn't easy, and he had a tough time believing that he had stood up to the people that had made his life hell since he had been diagnosed as quirkless. The more he thought about what just happened, the more he realized he used the quirk he had discovered during the entrance exam, all the while smiling. With this epiphany, he moved back to his spot near the entrance of the roof, straight to his school bag, digging in it. He took out a notebook and a pencil, ripping a page from that notebook, starting to write on the piece of paper. He wrote down what his quirk looked like, how it felt to wield it, and what little things that he could gather about it before folding the paper and stuffing it into his pocket. He then quickly put everything away, putting his phone in the side pocket of the bag before leaving the roof himself, Having a bit of nervous energy, he made a mental note to message the girls when he gets home and make contact with All Might soon. 𝗧𝗂 had just entered the foyer of the apartment that he shared with his mother when said person entered the field of his vision. 𝗂𝐭𝐴𝐲, a middle-aged woman who did not look the part, waved a letter at him near tears with a smile on her face. It's a letter from UA and it is about the same size as the one Katsuki got. It might be an acceptance letter. She spoke, beaming at him. Even before the incident at his entrance a month ago, she got by with guilt knowing that her son was quirkless, that her little boy would not be able to achieve his dreams of becoming a hero, and then imagine her surprise when the same boy's dream school contacted her about him having to be hospitalized after an incident where he might have overused his quirk in the exams, breaking several bones. A mix of shock, happiness, and disbelief had overtaken her at that time. Now her son had a good chance to go to his dream school, despite having lied to her about aiming for the school's general course. 𝗧𝗂 looked between her in mild surprise. Ochako had said that she had gotten her letter today but was waiting for him to open hers, so he had a feeling that he had gotten his. He looked at his mother with a sad smile, not knowing how to explain that fact, that he wanted to find out if he made the cut at the same time as his friend. "Do you mind if I open it with my friend?" he questioned, chuckling nervously. "I kind of promised her that I would." 𝗂𝐭 looked disappointed at first but was confused soon after. She knew that he and Katsuki had grown apart after the slime incident last year, but he had not told her about any other friends, especially female ones. "Oh, really, I didn't know." She spoke, playing with the letter in her hands. 𝗧𝗂 grimaced. Clearly his mother was not taking it well. He did not like the look of hurt on her face as he watched her grip the letter, so he gave in. He hoped Ochako wouldn't mind if she had joined them. "I can see if Uraraka-san doesn't mind if you were there when we open them. You were the major reason that I didn't give up after all, not even once, despite everyone telling me that I couldn't. You were right there by my side. Even when I started training and changed my diet, you even joined me to offer your support. I haven't said this or even apologized for lying to you. So I am going to do that now." He bowed his head to the woman. "I'm sorry I lied about the entrance exam. I know that if I did not get my quirk I could have been seriously hurt and I did it anyway. And thank you for everything. You were with me every step of the way. From when we thought I was quirkless and I wanted to still go to UA, to when we found out that I was just a late bloomer from Dr. Mori." He said, thinking about Shoko's doctor who had explained everything to his mother, and having explained one for all to her if she ever found out. "I am truly grateful, Mom." He finished, getting teary-eyed. His mother, 𝗂𝐭, was fighting off her tears before he had spoken, but now they were freely falling. Though she had a clue about her son's feelings, he never vocalized them until now, and it made her eyes sweat more than usual. Not knowing how to handle everything, she collapses to her knees right in front of him and takes his head to her chest in her arms. "You don't have to apologize to me. I just wanted my baby to be happy, no matter what form that took." 𝗂𝐭 began, speaking between hiccups. "I knew that it was hard. I knew that you didn't have many friends, so even if I couldn't understand what you were going through, I could see that you were working really hard thinking for the future, and I was so proud. I was so proud that you didn't give up and let this world prejudice stop you or beat you. I just wanted to help and I didn't know how. I thought that this was all I could do, and then you started training and I thought that I could make up for everything if I could support you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did not fight the doctor or find a second opinion on how quirks worked." She thought back at what Dr. Mori had said about abnormalities, about that whatever their doctor saw on 𝗧𝗂's X-ray did not necessarily mean that 𝗧𝗂 would not develop a quirk, that since mutation quirks exist, they couldn't rely on any physical change from the normal meant that 𝗧𝗂 did not have a quirk. "I feel so stupid. Here my baby was with 2 quirks, and here I was unable to help him with them sooner. I am so sorry that I couldn't give you a better life up until now." It hurt that he couldn't tell her about One for All, but he had to keep the quirk a secret, telling himself that it was for her sake, that it was for All Might, that he promised the man that he wouldn't, and he was going to keep that promise. "It's all right, Mom. You tried your best and we didn't know better. It's not your fault that we trusted our doctor, and I could not say that if we had gone to other doctors that I wouldn't still be quirkless. But you weren't." 𝗧𝗂 wrapped his arms around his mother and squeezed, feeling her warmth and closing his eyes. "It's all right. I am happy that I thought that I didn't have a quirk," he said, thinking of her and his new friends. "Really?" 𝗂𝐭 asked, her voice sounding distant. "Yeah, if I had these quirks earlier I doubt that I would be the person I am now. or if I would have met the friends I have. It was true to what he thought of himself. If he had a quirk even close to what he had known, he would be just like his childhood friend. Really now? I am pretty sure that I would be like Katsuki. Izuku jokes. The name did not sound right coming out of his lips, but the boy had grown distant from him a long time ago, and Izuku was starting to think that it was best to do the same. Even if it's just to keep appearances with their mothers, he will still call him by his first name regardless. And I don't think my new friends would like that very much. 𝐭𝐸 laughed at the thought. She was not sure that would be true, even if he had gotten his quirks at the same age as everyone else. He was very similar to how he was before they had visited the doctor. She thought about her close friend Mitsuki and how Izuku would fare if they were to switch sons, and she doubted that Izuku would act the way he would now. A thought for later, she suppose. I don't think so. You have always been you even when we thought you still might have a quirk. And I am sure your friends would still like you. Even if they didn't, you would win them over. She said, chuckling between breaths. Tell me more about this friend of yours, Izuku. From what I gathered, it's one of the girls that was with you in the hospital after the exam. Izuku blushed quickly, breaking free from 𝗵𝐻. He rubbed the back of his neck, chuckling, unable to look his mother in the face with everything that had been happening recently fresh on his mind. You are not wrong. 𝗵𝐻 clapped and cocked her head with a smile at her son's words. 𝗵𝐻 had gotten to the hospital that day. 2 girls were waiting in his room for him. He said her name was Uraraka. She thought as the image of the brunette entered her mind like a light bulb going off over her head. Ochako had helped her get Izuku home, going out of her way to help them get a taxi home, even joining them on their trip to make sure they had gotten back safe and sound. 𝗵𝐻 appreciated the girl's efforts, and it looked like she would be able to repay her sooner than later. I don't know much about either of them. You mind filling in the blanks? Izuku and 𝗵𝐻 moved to the kitchen where Izuku would talk about his friends and what they were up to all month. From what the woman gathered, Ochako had begun some sort of boot camp with Shoko playing instructor, and Izuku would work on conditioning and weight training to fill in the blanks. It would seem that Shoko had commented on how unprepared they were for what the profession and school had waiting for them. At that time, it appeared that they had become very close in that short period. Mid-speech, Izuku noticed the time on the wall clock over the refrigerator. He had forgotten that Katsuki's followers had sent the girls something, and he had no idea what it was or any clue as to what caused them to break his phone. He had to make sure that whatever it was, he would apologize and clear the air. Right. I almost forgot that I have to contact them to confirm our plans for the weekend. Oh, really now? 𝗵𝐻 was genuinely shocked. Izuku took off before she could question him further, leaving the letter with her. She couldn't help but put a smile on her face. Not only did Izuku make friends, it seemed that her little boy was not going to face any prejudice at UA. Honestly, it was a relief. She wouldn't know what to do if what he went through had continued. Izuku has really grown. I wish that you were here to see it, dear. She thought to herself, staring a hole at Izuku's door, now realizing that she had followed him. It was not a long wait, however. Izuku poked his head out, only to be surprised by the image of his mother. Oh hey. She said that it was okay. He spoke to her softly before motioning for his mother to come in. 𝗵𝐻 was surprised entering his room. What was filled to the brim with all-might merch a year ago had now been dwelled to a few items here and there. She knew that he had got rid of most of the money that he had given her for it, but even still this was too big of a change. She sat at the foot of Izuku's bed as her boy plugged away at the keyboard of his desktop in front of her. After a few moments, Izuku moved away from the screen, revealing the moving image of the brunette that she met a month ago. Hello, Ochako-chan. The mother spoke, waving at the webcam. Hello, Midoriya-san. You remember me? The question came out distorted but was mostly clear. Of course I remember you, dear. I wanted to thank you again for what you did for us that day. She spoke, remembering how both of Izuku's new friends worried over him that day, it being a day that became one of the few times that she saw Izuku being treated with such care by a stranger. Both mother and son saw the girl blush through the monitor. It was nothing really. I just wanted to make sure that both you and Izuku-kun made it back safely after everything. I wanted to return the favor that he did for me. The girl said, playing with the beans at the tips of her fingers. This time it was Izuku's turn to blush. In combination with her words, this was the first time that the other teenager had used his given name, and he was overjoyed. She called me by my first name. The boy squealed internally, this being the first time that anyone outside of Katsuki's mom and his immediate family had used it to address him, not to mention it was a girl at that. It means much more than you know. Thank you for looking out for 𝗧𝗂. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 answered the girl by standing up from the bed and making a show of bowing to her. Please raise your head, Midoriya-san. I didn't do anything to warrant any praise. I should be the one bowing. It was my fault that 𝗧𝗂-kun hurt himself in the first place. Ochako replied, looking at a bowing 𝗵𝗂, then was surprised as 𝗧𝗂 joined his mother. Please, both of you, it's fine. I am just glad everyone was safe and we became friends. This went on for several minutes before Ochako could talk them down and the subject of the UA letters came up. Are you sure that you want to share this moment with your parents? 𝗵𝗂 asked her son's friend, thinking back to the nice couple that she had a conversation with over the phone the day they met. It's alright, Midoriya-san. I will call them after this. They are busy out of town, so it's fine if I opened it without them. Ochako said with a sad smile. It dawned on the mother that the girl just wanted to share this moment with someone she was close to. If you are sure. 𝗵𝗂 gave 𝗧𝗂's letter to him with the two teens comparing the size of each package. It looks like we have the same news, Uraraka-san. 𝗧𝗂 said, showing his letter to the webcam. 𝗵𝗂 looked over at 𝗧𝗂 with a frown, noticing how he had addressed Ochako. It would seem so. Looked at hers with some optimism clear on her face. It looked like whatever fate that awaited her was the same on the surface as 𝗧𝗂. That brought a happy feeling, knowing what 𝗧𝗂 was able to accomplish. She would be one step closer to her goal. So how do you want to do this? She asked 𝗧𝗂. How about one of us opens theirs first and we go from there? 𝗧𝗂 suggested. I like it. This way you two can open them without stepping on each other's toes. 𝗵𝗂 said, enthused. I don't mind. Ochako said, thinking it over. You should go first. She suggested back. Are you sure? 𝗧𝗂 asked with a worried expression. Yes, I am more looking forward to seeing if you made it over myself, honest. She paused, thinking over what she was going to say next. I am kind of nervous. I don't think I could open it if I wanted to anyway. I think that seeing you do it will help. Ochako finished with a nervous smile. Okay. 𝗧𝗂 grabbed each end of his package with a bit of a tremble. Here we go. 𝗧𝗂 slowly tore open the envelope. A thick stack of papers falling out, as well as a disc-like object hitting his desk in front of the monitor. He turned to the paper, seeing if it would enlighten him. When he did, the disc blurred to life, projecting the image of All Might in a large room with a TV screen right behind him, broadcasting what looked like a leaderboard with 𝗧𝗂's, Shoko's, and Ochako's names taking up the top 3 spots for testing Site B. I am here as a projection. The suddenness of All Might's words startled everyone. 𝗧𝗂 quickly took the webcam off its mount and readjusted it and him so that Ochako could see, watching as her face transformed in awe at the sight of the number 1. I had some paperwork that took some time, so I couldn't contact you. I'm sorry. 𝗧𝗂 suddenly regretted that he had opened this letter, and it showed, with All Might being what looked candid with their relationship. Off-screen, a hand made several motions that were picked up by the camera. I didn't know you knew All Might. 𝗵𝗂 giggled, having met Toshinori Yagi before. So he is All Might, eh? Toshi's got some explaining to do. She thought, thinking of the hero's alter ego, him wearing the same suit and his hair the same way as his skeletal form. Wrap it up. But there is something I must talk to him about, All Might said to the figure off-screen. How was 𝗧𝗂 supposed to explain this to Ochako? His mother being close to All Might's alter ego made it easy to come up with something, but he wasn't supposed to know that they were dating yet, and he couldn't use his mother's relationship with All Might to explain away any familiarities with either adult's permission. He cursed All Might for this. It's going to push everything else back? Alright. Okay. All Might posed to the camera as 𝗧𝗂 looked at his mother, who had the same reaction. He just had staring a hole into the projection, getting a sense of danger from her. Even if you passed the written exam with flying colors, the 16 points you got in the practical wasn't enough. Of course, normally that would mean you didn't pass. The 3 watching deflated, with 𝗧𝗂 gripping his school uniform in near tears, and Ochako in shock. If that was all there was to it. I am an entertainer as well. What a joker All Might is, isn't that right? 𝗧𝗂 looked back at his mother, only to quickly turn back around in fear. The mother had a smile on her face that did not reach her eyes. Toshinori. She thought, sitting as still as possible. But first, look at this video. All Might clicked a button on a remote that came from out of nowhere. All Might turned around to a video of 𝗧𝗂 running past a one-pointer from the test before dodging several of its strikes, pulling a floating pair of clothes in the shape of a girl out of the way, disabling it in the process, then him running towards the massive zero-pointer, destroying it with one punch. Your actions spurred others to act. The video then cut to the laser-quirked boy following 𝗧𝗂 and a one-pointer into a side street, the boy only cutting the bot down when it was clear that he thought 𝗧𝗂 was in danger, then to Tapchaka and Shoko risking it all to save 𝗧𝗂 after he had defeated the zero-pointer. And finally to the invisible girl saving another student before defeating a one-pointer of her own, showing the weak spot that 𝗧𝗂 had showed her to the other person. Inko started to tear up watching the video. My little boy. She thought about watching the video, clearly proud of how heroic he already was. The entrance exam the other day was not graded on villain points. He clicked on the previous screen, getting a gasp from every observer. How can a hero course reject people who save others and do the right thing? Call that lip service? Bring it on. This is a job that requires risking one's life to put that lip service into practice. Rescue points. And they're given by a panel of judges. It's the other basic ability we at UA look at. 𝗧𝗂 Midoriya 60 points. Shoko Todoroki and Ochako Uraraka 18 points, Yuga Aoyama 10 points, and Toru Hagakure 5 points. All of you passed. 𝗧𝗂's dam finally broke and the tears started flowing. I guess that I passed too? Ochako spoke softly. This is too crazy, 𝗧𝗂 vocalized, wiping at his eyes. Come now, young Midoriya. This is your time. All Might said, holding out his hand with a larger-than-normal smile on his face. Oh. 1. 𝗧𝗂 Midoriya 76 points. 2. Shoko Todoroki 74 points. 3. Ochako Uraraka 63 points. 4. Tetsutisu 56 points. 5. Masahiro Ojiro 50 points. 6. Toru Hagakure 50 points. 7. Tenya Ida 48 points. 8. Pony Tsunatori 48 points. 9. Yui Kodai 46 points. 10. Yuga Aoyama 42 points. Midoriya. Sounds great, Todoroki. You wouldn't mind if I brought along some friends from school? Todoroki. Uraraka. Todoroki. And who are you supposed to be? Midoriya. I'm sorry, what does that mean? Uraraka. It means who are you? Because you sure are not 𝗧𝗂 Midoriya. Midoriya. Midoriya, of course I am. What has gotten into you guys? Todoroki. I don't know if either you are stupid or illiterate, but you had better not have hurt him if even a hair was misplaced. I swear to all that is All Might that I will find you. And you won't like it when I do. Uraraka. Aldra Junior High. Todoroki. Thank you, Uraraka. Oh, see you after school, fake Midoriya. Oh, something wrong, Sho? The gentle voice of Shoko Todoroki's mother entered her ears. Her mother was looking at her with concern over a laptop in her room in the hospital, sporting a fashionable pair of pink reading glasses. Shoko herself had entered the room, angrily staring a hole into her cell phone, as if to set it on fire with her eyes. You don't look particularly happy. A thought entered Rei Todoroki's mind as soon as the words left her mouth. You know I am not holding you here. If you don't want to visit, you don't have to. I am just happy to know that you are happy and healthy. No, it's nothing like that. Shoko paused, putting her thoughts together. She didn't want to overstep with 𝗧𝗂, but she did not want to leave him to suffer alone. Can I get your advice about something? Rei looked surprised at first, but quickly closed her laptop screen to give her daughter her full attention. Below the surface of the gentle smile on her face, she was ecstatic about being able to fill the role of a parent despite her current lodging and state. What is it, Sho? If I can, I want to help. Shoko nodded, taking a seat in the chair which was moved next to the bed, nervously playing with her hands. Well, you see. Shoko paused to take a deep breath. Remember the boy that went to help his friend during the slime incident? Rei thought back to last year when Shoko had been brought into this hospital for that very incident and her breakdown afterwards. She had been told very little about what happened, but from what she was able to put together that her daughter had saved some boys, and apparently she needed advice about one of them. She internally frowned at the time she had missed being in here, considering that her Shoko was now at that age. Yeah, he was the one that came to visit you, right? Yeah. Well, I just found out that he was a late bloomer, and his classmates seem to have been bullying him for being quirkless, and apparently, it has not stopped. I was wondering what to do. I mean, I want to help him, but I don't know how to or how much I can help. 𝐡𝗂𝐚𝐲 vocalized her dilemma to her mother. Ray quickly ran the problem in her head. A seemingly quirkless boy who got his quirk in his teens. Aside from the bullying, he sounds like someone I once knew. She mused, thinking of how this situation reminded her of her youth. Although she wanted to draw from experience for advice, she was unaware of the situation on all fronts. The quirkless she knew before marrying 𝗵𝗃 tended to be well-liked in her circles, and the 6-year gap in time that she was separated from 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 did not help her understand the young teen in front of her. 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 in her mind was still that 9-year-old that was adamant in becoming the greatest hero. Ray could see her point, though. Thinking back to a friend from her school days, she would stop at nothing to help him. But she wasn't sure if 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 would do the same or had the same boundaries that she had at that age. Finally coming up with something, she spoke. That is tough. I was kind of in the same position as you when I was about your age, so I think that I can tell you what I did. Hey, do you remember when you were little and I asked if you still wanted to be a hero? She got a nod from 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲. Well, your answer meant the world to me. It gave me a lot of courage to do something I was too scared to do at the time. Really? 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 asked, barely remembering the answer herself. Yeah, you bet. That fearless smile of yours kept me going, Ray said, turning her attention to the room's ceiling. I really thought that you could be a hero with it, she said, thinking of her husband's face. Though he would smile from time to time, it only depicted joy a few times, and it was never reassuring, even when he did try. She hated that expression on him. Though she hated that smile, 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲's was different. It could convey a great many of her emotions, just like the boy from her youth. So just like I want to say that you should do whatever you can for that boy, but only you can decide that. Lending an ear, being a shoulder to lean on, or even confronting the boy's bullies for him. I know that whatever you decide to do, you are going to try your best, and that is something to be proud of. You think? I know so. Ray spoke, petting the bed beside her with 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 moving to be beside her mother. Ray took the girl in a side hug, surprising 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲. I would talk to this boy first, but I am sure that whatever you two decide, you will do everything in your power to overcome it. That's just who you are, 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲, she said, resting her daughter's head on her shoulder, adjusting her glasses with her free hand. Hey, Mom, 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 said, staring off into space. Yeah, Ray replied. Thank you. Ray couldn't help but gush. You're welcome, she said, opening up the laptop that she had put away to listen to 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲. Now, you're going to help me decide on a home for the 3 of us while you and 𝗵𝗃𝗍 are still in school. I was thinking something close to 𝑢𝐴, since your sister has her license and a car to commute. Ray spoke, opening a real estate website. Don't worry about us, Mom. You should find a place you like. 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 replied she did not care where they ended up living as long as her mother liked it and was comfortable. Of course, I am worried about you. No matter what you say, no matter how old you get, you two are still my daughters and your happiness means the world to me. Oh, how about this one show? A 2-story house in a good neighborhood, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and only a couple of stops away from 𝑢𝐴. So taking the train wouldn't be a problem. Ray spoke, clicking the link to a large house near 𝗵𝗃𝗍 city center, having 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 cringe at the price. Isn't that 150 a bit much for just you and 𝗵𝗃? 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 asked, not sure what an appropriate amount could be. Oh, you don't have to worry about money, 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲. We can afford it. I used to run your father's agency once upon a time, so I have quite the change saved up. She spoke, brushing off the 150 million price tag on the home. But I guess you are right, it might be too big if Natsuo wants to have a place to himself. Let's keep looking. While the two of them looked for their next home, 𝗵𝗃𝗍 stood just out of sight of her mother and sister as she listened to their discussions, becoming more and more animated with a smile at the entrance of her mother's room. Well, I guess I should leave them alone. They do have a lot to catch up on after all. She moved to leave to give them both space, but as she left the entry, she was surprised by the sight of her little sister entering her periphery. 𝗵𝗃-chan, 𝗧𝗂𝐚𝐲 announced while making a hasty exit from the hospital room. Yeah, what is it? 𝗵𝗃𝗍𝐻 answered in a state of confusion. Please tell Mom that an 1.5-hour commute to school is asking too much. Excuse me? Several hours later at the Midoriya residence, Izuka had just finished watching Ochako's acceptance as the two of them were on a video call, with Inko still in the room. Her video from 𝑢𝐴 was much the same, just with All Might addressing Ochako instead. Now, however, the teens had moved to the papers that came with the disc, In the pile were their assigned class and schedules. Apparently they were in the same class, which was something that both 𝐭𝐴 and 𝗧𝗏𝗄 celebrated, but left 𝗧𝗏𝗄 a blushing mess. Then their attention was brought to the forum for the creation of their first hero costumes. The school looked to foot the bill and create all the hero course students in-house through the support course, in which 𝗧𝗏𝗄 showed an interest before he inherited one for all. It looks like they want us to go into detail with what we want and the needs for our quirks. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 spoke, examining the page. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 herself seemed to take in the information in a distracted manner, not knowing where to start. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 noticed. Getting an idea, she turned to 𝗧𝗏𝗄 to get the girl's attention. If you need help, you can come by any time. You remember the doctor that took care of 𝐒𝐭𝐻𝑒 and Shoko-chan, right? She spoke, getting confirmation from the girl. Well, her daughter is about to be a second year at 𝐒𝐬𝐽 with a gravity quirk, and her husband works in the support industry, so they might be able to help you come up with something. I was going to have them make 𝗧𝗏𝗄s, but now that I think about it, I could include you in it. Ma'am, I couldn't ask you to do that for me. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 spoke, embarrassment clear on her face. 𝗏𝗏𝗄 laughed, waving 𝗧𝗏𝗄 off. I wanted to find a way for me to show my gratitude to you for looking out for 𝗧𝗏𝗄, she said, taking the paper from 𝗧𝗏𝗄. Let's see here. She continued, looking it over. Honestly, ma'am, you don't have to feel the need to. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 tried to stop 𝗏𝗏𝗄 in her tracks. I am perfectly fine using what the school provides. Nonsense, 𝗧𝗏𝗄. I am not taking no for an answer. Like I said, this is to thank you for what you have done for us. 𝗏𝗏𝗄 said, shutting down the girl. You better give up, Uriaraka-san. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 added, knowing full well that when his mother puts her mind into something she won't back down, even if it meant kicking and screaming. He honestly felt bad for 𝗧𝗏𝗄 that 𝗏𝗏𝗄 had taken a liking to her especially. Not you too, 𝗧𝗏𝗄, 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said, conflicted. She did not want to be seen as taking advantage of her new friend's kindness, so she felt odd about taking anything from them, considering her family finances, a major reason that she applied to 𝗬𝗏 in the first place, but it appeared she did not have a choice at the moment on what to do. 𝗧𝗏𝗄, as she wanted, would have taken 𝗏𝗏𝗄 up on the offer, arranging for a hero costume for both her and 𝗧𝗏𝗄. Fine, you win. Yes. 𝗏𝗏𝗄 celebrated, pumping a fist. Are you free this weekend? I can take your measurements then. I am sure that they would want them considering, and your quirk we are going to need to take down how it works and how you use it. I am so excited. The two watched as she went into a diatribe of her own. I see where you get it, 𝗧𝗏𝗄, 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said, watching 𝗏𝗏𝗄 mutter to herself. You think? Please tell me that I am not that bad. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said as he looked worriedly at 𝗏𝗏𝗄. I'll try not to do it anymore. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said, remembering the exams as two of the examinees had shushed him. That's not what I meant. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 stopped to gather her thoughts. Although it surprised me, I kind of like it. It shows how passionate you are about hero work. So please don't stop on my account. A frown appeared as soon as she finished speaking. I am not like you or Todoroki-san. I am in it for the money heroes make not. She stopped herself mid-sentence, not wanting to finish the thought. My mom and dad work really hard to provide for us, and I just want to help them out as soon as I can. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 froze, staring at the girl who seemed to be on the verge of tears. He could understand where she was coming from. He too, if his father was still with them, would be in the same shoes as she was, though now that he thought about it even more now, with it being just him and his mother. I think what you want to do is great, Uriaraka-san. I feel the same way. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 spoke, trying to reassure her about her decision to become a hero and the meaning behind it. Thank you. 𝗧𝗏𝗄-kun. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 spoke softly into her microphone, not able to look into the camera or her monitor at 𝗧𝗏𝗄 for that matter. In that moment, 𝗧𝗏𝗄 couldn't help but point out that 𝗧𝗏𝗄 had now started to use his given name when addressing him instead of his family's. Why, you see, called me 𝗧𝗏? 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said, red as a tomato. You don't like me? I can stop. It would have been awkward to call you by your family name with your mom there, so I thought it would be better to call you by your given name. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 explained herself, returning the favor with a blush of her own. No, it's fine. It's just you are the first person who was my friend who has ever called me by my given name. I guess I need to adjust. You can keep calling me if you want. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said, rubbing the back of his head. He was too embarrassed to say that she, a girl, made him super happy. Then I want you to call me by mine. I'm sorry. Izuku was brought out of his thoughts by Ochako's proclamation. I want you to call me Ochako, as only fair. Ochako couldn't see the exact moment Izuku stopped all functions as she couldn't face the camera and monitor, but her request was registered by both mother and son. She also didn't see the wide grin that showed itself on Inko's face at the scene. Not wanting to be on this call any longer, Ochako decided it was best to end things for the night and call her parents about the letter. Not that she was too embarrassed to continue their conversation. No, definitely not that. I have to go. I promised to call my parents when I got my results. I am going to do that now. Before it gets too late. Alright. Izuku began. Good night. Ochako-san. Izuku said, bowing to his monitor. Ochako gave Izuku a sweet smile before replying. Good night, Izuku-kun. I see you on the weekend, right? Right. Izuku returned the favor as Ochako ended the call. After she did, Izuku couldn't help but have the curl of his lips widen after they had finished their goodbyes. Suddenly, Inko spoke up after the room went silent. That was cute. I am glad you two got a little closer. Her speaking seemed to break Izuku out of his daze, realizing that she was still there. What? Did you forget that I was still here? Izuku finally got a response from Toshinori, though that wasn't what he was expecting. The response was still nice to receive. Now he had 6 days to put together all of the questions he had for One for All on a list for his mentor. Though he had a list, now was not the time and place. His school had gotten the results of his exams, and now his teacher was announcing that he, Katsuki, and a girl that he hadn't had the pleasure of knowing had passed the entrance exams of the high school. Unlike the pigtailed brunette that stood beside him and Katsuki, both boys had made it to the hero course while she was in its general course, which shocked the class in front of the three. Some thought it had to be a mistake while others did not believe it, but Izuku and the other two pretty much ignored the sea of faces as their teacher announced their acceptance with pride, basically patting himself on the back. After that was done, their day returned to the usual norm. Aside from Izuku's daydreams of the future, he was finally going to UA and was in line to become what he always dreamed of. Before he knew it, the day had gone by without much fanfare. Putting his supplies away, he moved to exit the classroom to face an unseasonably cold February day. In his haste, he almost ran into someone. Dodging them last second, a feminine voice entered his ears as a maroon-headed girl got his attention. Midoriya-san, do you have a minute? Izuku looked at her as if she grew a second head. A beautiful girl that he had not seen before was talking to him, a rarity that had been flipped on its head recently. Me? He questioned, looking around him. Yes, you. The girl answered with a blank face. She then took out a phone from the school bag hanging from her shoulder, showing the screen to him. On it was an image of Shoko giving the camera the V symbol with him covered in sweat with a water bottle looking at something off screen, and both of them in their workout gear. This is you, right? She said, pointing at him in the picture. Yada. Good. Todoroki-san was worried. You got your phone, right? She said, returning her phone to her bag. Yeah. Who are that? Before he could complete his sentence, he was dragged behind her with a strong grip. The name's Yasuda. I'm a second-year student, and will also be going to UA in the next school year as a recommendation student for the support course. I owe Todoroki-san a big favor. As of that favor. Yasuda turned to Izuku, who looked confused at what was going on. She then sighed. You haven't met my sister yet. She got a shake of the head. Right, my sister. My half-sister is Kazue Mori, Dr. Riko Mori's, my stepmother's daughter. The image of the middle-aged blonde doctor entered Izuku's headspace, the quirk specialist that was Shoko's doctor. Oh, my mom said something about her having a daughter. Sorry, I have not had the pleasure. No problem, she is not the reason that I came to you today. Yasuda spoke with them when they arrived at the school's library. Quick to enter, she saw a free table across the room. As I was saying, I owe Todoroki a favor. And that favor has something to do with me? Izuku responded, following behind her, as they made their way to the table that Yasuda had spotted. In a way that is true. I left a blank check and she cashed in. Yasuda answered, not willing to go any further than that, them sitting opposite each other at the table. Anyway, do you have your phone? This girl threw Izuku off. Not only was she insanely beautiful, but she did not allow him to think up a response. In the most generous meaning of the term, she was abrasive. Her long maroon hair cascaded off her shoulders as she dug into her school bag, with sparks of life that she had for her items showing in her golden eyes that had not been there for him. Taking out a small set of tools, she turned to him and waited for 𝗧𝗂 to present her with what she wanted. "Oh, right." He took out his phone with a shattered screen, much to the girl's surprise. "Sorry, I had dropped it yesterday. I was going to look into getting it replaced." She looked the phone over and at 𝗧𝗂 with a hint of skepticism showing in her eyes. "Are you sure you dropped it?" Yasuda sighed again when 𝗧𝗂 shrunk into his chair. "Midoriya-san, can I say something?" 𝗧𝗂 looked at Yasuda nervously. "What is it?" "I am quirkless." 𝗧𝗂's eyes went wide. He had no idea that there was another quirkless at this school. He never looked into the fact that he might not be the only one. "So I understand. At least in part. I have dealt with my fair share over my 13 years. I get it. So I will ask you again. Did you drop it?" 𝗧𝗂 could tell by just looking at her that she wasn't lying about this, and in fact that she for some reason had led a different life than him. But in her eyes, there was nothing there like he once had. They were the same, but he had hope where she had given up, and his mouth open with a mutual understanding that went over his head. "No." And she nodded at that one word. Digging into her bag, she pulled out a brand new cell phone still in its package. "You have done well to put up with the garbage of the world. I am happy that you were a late bloomer. I assume that being a hero is your dream, Midoriya-san?" 𝗧𝗂 nodded as the girl motioned for his cell phone. "I hope we can live out our dreams at you." She spoke as 𝗧𝗂 handed her the phone. 𝗧𝗂, now realizing, found her words to be at odds with her introduction. She implied several times that she would be attending the same school as him despite being a second year. 𝗧𝗂 watched as she worked, with the impression that she had to be incredibly intelligent to be able to not only skip a year but to be accepted to UA as well. He watched as Yasuda extracted the SIM card from his phone and inserted it into the new one. "You have said that you are going to UA at the start of the next year, but I am a second year?" She then turned on the new phone. "I guess there's no avoiding it. 𝐒𝐻𝐻, come out," she said to her bag as a robot, a small dog-sized nine-tailed fox picked out of her school bag, looking around as if searching for something. "It's all right, 𝐒𝐻𝐻. It is just the three of us here. It's safe to come out." The metallic canine yipped at its owner before climbing out from her bag, tentatively making its way to 𝗧𝗂. "Huh." Yasuda let out a grunt as she watched the fox. "That's weird. What is?" 𝗧𝗂 questioned, watching the robot cock its head at him before getting comfortable on the table the teens were sitting at, and lying its body in front of him facing Yasuda. "She is usually wary of strangers. You, my sister, and Todoroki-san are the only ones she seems to like right away. I programmed her to behave like a dog, and also this is strange how quickly she would warm to you without you doing anything," she said, putting the phone down and looking at the creature as if examining it. "Wait, did you say program?" 𝗧𝗂 asked, mystified. Right. I keep forgetting that we are strangers." "Yes, I programmed her AI. It was the project that I had to complete as part of my recommendation to UA, that, and some other stuff that I wasn't able to complete in time," she said as the eyes of the robot closed, not realizing how mad what she just said was. Leave it to the daughter of a support specialist to create something so ridiculous. He thought as it dawned on him how ill-equipped he was if he had gone with his plan B. "So much for that. I wouldn't be able to compete with that." He continued. "How old are you?" "I'm 13. I don't see what my age would have to do with anything," Yasuda said, drawing her attention away from the fox to 𝗧𝗂. "Is there a problem with my age?" she asked as she returned her gaze to the phone. "𝐒𝐻𝐻, can you transfer his files to the new phone, please?" 𝗧𝗂 watched as the fox got up, gave the girl a yip, and pranced over to the two phones. "No, I did not mean anything by it. I just find you to be impressive. That's all." 𝗧𝗂, as he saw the girl's hand pause at a collar at the fox's neck. For her part, a small blush formed while she returned to what she was doing, that being pressing a button on the collar and releasing two cables with two different male ends. She plugged both phones into each cable, and 𝗧𝗂's phone blurred to life as a string of code appeared on his screen. "It isn't all that impressive. I bet you could write something at 𝐒𝐻𝐻's level." The fox let out a growl. "I'm not saying that you are not 𝐒𝐻𝐻. I am just saying that I am not." This time the robot whined. "I know," she said, bringing a hand up to pet the cool metal on the fox's head. "No, I am serious, Yasuda-san. This is no small feat. I wish I could do something like that," 𝗧𝗂 said, excitedly. I could teach you, Yasuda said, while her blush grew. Oh, really cool. Izuku's hands claimed the one that was on the fox's head, leaning in. I have always been interested but never had a teacher. Will you seriously teach me? Why, yeah. She looked away, her fox cocking its head at the action. Izuku looked at his hands, the excitement leaving, and at her face with a matching blush. So sorry. He was quick to let go. No, it's fine. I get that you got excited. I was when I first started to learn too. She spoke as Kara watched the two of them. The small robot looked at Izuku's cracked phone as the screen went dark, looking up at Yasuda with a yip. Are you done? The teen questioned, getting another yip in return. She unplugged the phones, pressing the buttons at the fox's collar, the cords retracting. Do you share your passcodes with anyone? She asked Izuku, getting a confused look back. Your passwords. Did you share your passwords with anyone? She reworded the question. No, I am usually a private person. Izuku answered with no clue of what was happening right now. I get that. Yasuda retorted, handing the new cell phone to Izuku. This is the latest model from my father's company aimed towards heroes. Kara copied over all of your files and contacts so you don't have to worry about reinstalling anything. You don't even have to worry about security and it breaking since it's meant for heroes. It's tough all around and has resistance to the usual, you know. And with that ends my debt with Todoroki-san, she said as Izuku took the phone. Izuku was at a loss for words. He did not know what to say about all of this. For some reason this girl had given him a new cell phone out of nowhere, and a pretty expensive one at that, and he had Shoko to thank for it. Although he appreciated the gesture, he could not take it. It felt wrong too. I can't take this, Izuku said, trying to give the phone back. The girl waved him off, pushing his outstretched hand back towards him. No, seriously, Midoriya-san, keep it, she said, offering him a gentle smile. I procured it for you, and it was customized to suit your needs, so you gotta keep it. But Kara, she called the fox. Show him your app, she said as the robot yipped at her. The phone blurred to life as a paw print displayed on the lock screen. You said you want to learn to write code at the level of Kara, right? She asked Izuku, his confusion returning. Well, using that phone you can study her code while I make improvements. With how Kara is, I can't do this on my own, so you can consider it as me asking for help. Kara may be as impressive as you say, but she is far from perfect. Aika-sama is correct. Izuku nearly dropped his phone when a computerized voice entered his ears coming from the phone. Aika. That must be her given name, he thought as he looked at the robot fox staring back at him sitting on the table, then at the girl. I don't think that I am qualified for this, he replied. You don't have to be, at least not yet. Aika continued the argument. The fact that you are not freaking out right now means that you are a lot better for the job than most people. Think of it this way, you are beta testing for Kumiho Industries, and you are learning from one of its engineers. You have a lot to gain from this, you know. She was right in some regards. He had some interest in the support industry, and this was a perfect way to get a foot inside the door. Not to mention, if he did a good job, he would have effectively gotten a support company on his side during his hero journey, and Shoko trusted her. He had no good reason to decline, so he won't. You win. I will take it. Really? Aika questioned excitedly. Yeah, so what do you want me to do? With the app, that is, Izuku retorted. Nothing for now. I haven't finished Kara's hardware, so I want to concentrate on that. Aika answered. I will for sure have that done before we enter UA. We can start our lessons then. So just enjoy your new phone for now. And like I said, your settings, contacts, and files are saved to that phone, so you don't have to worry about any of that. She continued. What about the app? He questioned as the paw print disappeared from his screen. It works on proximity, so you will have to be pretty close to Kara's main body for her to have access to it, and even then she is going to need permission. Aika answered, getting Izuku to look at his phone wide-eyed. That sounds super cool. I can't wait. Izuku responded. Ray had better mornings than today. For 3 months now she had gotten her youngest to visit her in the hospital after a 6-year absence in the child's life, and in a few more weeks she would be sharing a home with her daughters after almost 7 years. 7 years that had been taken from her by the man that was visiting her now, a visit that only came when he needed something, or he was ordered by their oldest daughter. You seem to forget something, 𝐻𝐸𝐽. I love our daughters, I love our sons. But you, 𝐻𝐸𝐽, but with you there was no such thing. When we got engaged, it was a business arrangement so I could take care of my father when he was sick and you got your child. That was all that was to it. I don't care that you were so twisted to think what we became was anything but that. She was done. Every time that she had put up with 𝐻𝐸𝐽's bullshit coming back to her, every time he had blamed her when something happened. No wonder she was in here. I have tried to love you, 𝐻𝐸𝐽. Gods know how much over the last 25 years. I even tried to see if I could have some form of affection for you. 𝐻𝐸𝐽 watched as she went over the papers for the new housing for her and their daughters, him trying to make her reconsider the move, and her needing a guarantor after being in a hospital for 6 years and now being separated. No matter what she said, he did truly care for her in his own way despite what their original arrangement was. So there's nothing I can say that can make you reconsider? Ray, please don't do this. 𝐻𝐸𝐽. Ray looked at him under her pink, thick-framed reading glasses. I never wanted my children to hate their father, but you forced this outcome, not me. Tuya is gone. Fuyu had to take care of her sister when her own parents couldn't. Natsu can't stand the sight of you and is living abroad, and Sho is barely hanging on. I can see it in her eyes, and you two have not spoken in years. So please, 𝐻𝐸𝐽, let's end this. She paused to pass him the documents. Like you, I don't want to lose another one. Let me be there for the ones that are left. They need us to be there for them. I will sign this, but please consider it. He looked at the documents, using the nightstand near her bed as a backing surface as he signed in the provided spaces. Ray sighed, frowning. No matter what their relationship became, they were married and they had 4 children together, and she did have to make concessions when he had wronged her in the past, but now that was a thing of the past and she was not giving in. 𝐻𝐸𝐽, I don't know what else to say. Let's say I did back down from this. What would happen then? Is what we are ever going to change? Or are you going to make me give you another child at my age? Have you considered what Sho and Natsu would think if we did work this out? Natsu is coming home. Fuyu is close to getting her teacher's degree, and Sho is starting at UA tomorrow. We can't let history repeat itself. She finished. 𝐻𝐸𝐽 understood what she was trying to say, but still, he wasn't ready to give up yet. Not on her and not on their family. He had to do whatever it took to fix it, no matter what it took. He was the number 2 hero for a reason, and what would that look like if he couldn't rehab this situation? Izuka, do you have tissues? The voice of Inko Midoriya entered Izuka's ears as he was tying his shoes at the entrance of the small apartment he shared with his mother, her slim frame hovering over him. Yeah. He replied, letting out a grunt in affirmation. And your handkerchief? What about your handkerchief? Your hanky. There was something comical about her tone when she asked him in a barrage. I have it too, Mom. He paused what he was doing to look up at her. I promised Ochako-san and Todoroki-san that I would walk with them from the station, and I am going to be late. Izuka spoke in an annoyed tone. I have to hurry, he said, getting up and leaning in to kiss the taller woman on the cheek. Izuka then picked up the same backpack from the slime incident from a year ago before turning to leave. Izuka. Inko called out to him shyly. Yes, Mom. The boy answered, their door half open. Inko closed the distance between them as she turned her attention to the tie of his UA uniform, fixing the crooked red accessory, brushing off the gray blazer, and smiling down at the uniform as she did so. You look really cool. Go knock them dead, she said, unable to keep her eyes from watering. For the first time since he was 4 years old, Inko could see the excitement in Izuka's eyes about going to school, and it hit her all at once. For the first time, he had friends who were going to treat him like an equal. For the first time, she wasn't worried that his teachers were going to treat him like a pariah, and she did not have to worry he was going to have Toshinori with him. She could not help but start the waterworks, overcome with emotion. Izuku, seeing his mom cry tears of happiness, closed the door and surprised his mother with an embrace, holding on to her tightly. This is how he would start his first day of high school, with an unbelievable high. Letting go of her, he offered her his see you later. I'm off. Izuka spoke with a grin that Inko never thought she would see again. Oh. The trip to the station that Shoko had to take was surprisingly rough. Being the first time in nearly a year she had to take the train during the morning rush, it did not help that she almost got lost. But now she was at the station she was supposed to meet Ochako and Izuku at, being the first one at the spot near the entrance as they agreed upon. Being here early afforded her the time she needed to make sure she was presentable. She made sure that the cream cardigan of her school uniform was neatly worn, the red tie straight, and the pleated skirt even and straightened. Izuku was the first of the two of them to show up, causing Shoko to light up at the event. Midoriya. She waved him over, looking him up and down. The boy looked smart, and both teens could not help but admire each other's uniform. Izuku could not help but think how pretty she looked in hers. His eyes traveled to the cardigan down to the dark green plaid miniskirt over her long legs in a pair of black pantyhose. Something about seeing her wear them drew his attention to her legs, and he couldn't help but admire them, his face growing red. "This is the first time I have seen you in your uniform, Midoriya. You look good?" Izuku was knocked out of his stupor looking at the genuine smile on Shoko's face. With his face still red, he looked away embarrassed, complimenting her as well. Wow, you look good too. Todoroki-san. Izuku spoke, not able to look her in the face. "Thank you, Midoriya," she said, pulling a phone from her school bag to check the time. They both had an hour to get to school and had plenty of time for Ochako to arrive, her living the furthest away from UA and the two being rather early. "So what do you want to do while we wait for Uraraka?" Shoko said, placing her phone back in its place. "I guess we can talk about what we have been doing in the last 2 months," Izuku said. The three of them have been busy and unable to hang out with each other since February. "Yeah, sounds nice. Did you get in touch with All Might about?" Shoko looked around conspiratorially, making sure that no one would overhear them. "The second quirk," she finished, intrigued by the black tendrils that came from a quirk that wasn't one for all. That and the fact that he was the only other person she knew who basically had more than one quirk. Izuku thought back to the conversation with Toshinori. He had asked him a bunch of questions about the tendril quirk and got an "I don't know" in return, but what he did get from the man was a promise that he would look into it for later. Now, however, the pair are going to act as if the second quirk was always his to begin with, and one for all was the catalyst needed to awaken it. Toshinori-san said that we should work on the assumption that the quirk is mine for the time being until we can look into every user of one for all. He said, glad that he had someone to talk to about all of this. Even if they avoided talking about the quirk unless they saw each other in person to avoid a paper trail. Shoko nodded, getting the gist of the situation. With her father being a hero, she knew all too well that it was common for heroes to keep the full extent of their abilities from each other. She also understood that there could be situations where a one-for-all user would need to pass on the quirk without fully explaining what the quirk could do. She just hoped that would not happen to Izuku if she was being honest. "So, did he say if Shimura-san would know?" she asked, thinking of their shared hero's mentor. "I don't know, it's not like we can ask her either." Izuku spoke, remembering what Toshinori had said about his mentor, and he could not help but worry that the same might happen to him and Toshinori. It was clear that the man held a lot of resentment from that time, and he could not help but wish that history would not repeat itself for his and his mother's sake. He did not want to lose another father figure. "Yeah, that's that for now, I guess," Izuku confirmed. "So what have you been up to, Todoroki-san?" Shoko looked up at the sky with a smile on her face. She and her sister have started moving their things to their new home with their mother, and Natsuo, her older brother, is going to spend his summer vacation with them, and her parents are getting a divorce. All things that she was more than happy about, though she couldn't tell Izuku that knowing that he lost his father at a young age. Well, Mom is going to be leaving the hospital as soon as they clear all of their paperwork. And we are moving closer to UA. I am going to be a Mizudafu native from now on like you, Midoriya. Wow, I am happy for you, Todoroki-san. I would say that I could give you a tour, but you know my situation. The boy cursed himself for being the only local in their group and not being able to show the girls around his hometown because of his own social awkwardness. If he had tried, he would have had a couple of friends like Ayaka, a quirkless from his school, around him by now. Don't worry, Midoriya. We have a lot of time to explore once my family gets settled, you know, Shoko said, chuckling. Plus, with Uraraka around, there are going to be no stoppages to what we will be able to do together. Lucky you. That last crack nearly went over the boy's head when his face turned a bright red. Besides, the three of us are great as a team together if our time training was anything to go by. Speaking of which, Midoriya. She turned to him to examine him. Have you been keeping up with your training? She said, looking him over head to toe. Izuku looked at her mock offended. He knew that she intended it as a joke, so he was going to respond similarly. Of course, Todoroki-san. You know that there was no way I can slack off now. He put the black tendrils on display. I can use them as if they are my own hands now, Izuku said, removing his backpack and putting it back on with his quirk like it was second nature. And they are several times stronger than my hands, so there is a lot more that I can pick up too. He wanted to pick her up to demonstrate, but he reframed at the implication, getting the back of his ears to become red from embarrassment. What about you? I remember you telling All Might that you did not know much about your quirk and your 𝐭𝐿 last year. I guess what I am trying to say is, how are you doing on that front? If you want to talk about that. That is? Yeah, it's fine. Actually, my sister had to stop me from overdoing it. I think with my growth spurt I got stronger as well as my quirk. Dr. Mori said that what happened last year might not happen again. But with a stronger quirk, she wasn't sure. She wasn't willing to let me push myself to my new limit just yet, with my family's history. She looked over to see Izuku cock his head at her words. She means with the fire users in my family, we have a chance to overheat or even burn ourselves if we are not careful. And with how hot and cold I can get being totally fine, she was not willing to risk it. If the color of her flames were anything to go by, then Izuku could surmise that her flames could get to about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit and she would be totally fine, which was a crazy thought. She was a teenager, and she was already halfway to producing something as hot as the surface of the sun, and that was not her limit either. Wow. That's super cool, Todoroki-san. Izuku exclaimed with a large smile. And with how old we are, that means you have room for your quirk to grow even stronger. Honestly, I am jealous. If I was born with a quirk from my dad, we could have tested it out. He had a fire quirk too. He continued excitedly. I mean, there's still a chance I can get one considering everything. Oh man, I wonder if there was someone who had one for all that had a fire quirk. Shoko could do nothing but blush as Izuku went on animatedly about the subject. He was the first person her age to not only compliment her for supernovae, but he did not compare it to her father's quirk, which seems silly with how much stronger she was to her father, but it was appreciated all the same. She had to intervene once it was clear he wasn't going to stop, and they moved on to other topics as they waited for Ochako. About 30 minutes later, Ochako arrived out of breath with the blazer of her uniform under one arm while her bag hung over her opposite shoulder. Sorry, I am late, she said, using her hands at her knees to support herself. I was helping my parents sort out some material for a job in Sapporo. She paused to catch her breath. Anyway, ready to go. Izuku-kun. Todoroki-san. What the hell? Shoko felt her chest start to tighten. Yeah. We were just waiting on you, Ochako-san. You ready, Todoroki-san? Izuku asked Shoko. Hang on a minute. She was pissed and she didn't know why. Her mind landed on it's not fair, something changed and she was left behind. Wait a minute, since when did you two start calling each other by your given names? Shoko said, narrowing her eyes and crossing her arms under her chest. Izuku flinched at the suddenness of the shift in mood, and Ochako was taken aback by it. I have had chats with Izuku-kun's mother before, and it would have been awkward to have called them both by their family names. Ochako explained, only now realizing that the pair might be closer than she thought. Shoko did not mind it when Izuku accidentally touched her. She even made a joke about it when they first met. Plus, she did not want to lose her first female friend in their class, so she explained it as what it was on the surface. I have a mother too, and so do you. She paused to point at herself. So here's what we are going to do. Shoko. She pointed at Ochako, then at Izuku, saying their names as she pointed to the corresponding person. And none of that honorific bull. We are friends after all, right? Shoko finished with a smug smile. It was only fair after all. Ochako was pleasantly surprised. She thought that Shoko was jealous because of Izuku, but she was just worried about the name thing, and she could not help but agree with her. They should all be on equal footing, missing the very fact that her original assumption was right. I don't have a problem with it, Izuku. Izuku froze, being put on the spot, but he was all for it, although he did not know how to vocalize it. So Izuku just dropped his head to hide his developing blush. The two girls noticed, and Shoko was the first to speak. You don't have to rush yourself if you are not comfortable with it. She is right, you know. We all do things at our own pace, so take your time. You can call me whatever makes you comfortable. Ochako added. Taking a deep breath, Izuku finally spoke. No, it's fine, SS Shoko Ochako. This was going to take time to get used to. I don't mind, it's just weird for me, you know. I want to do it though. He finished getting an eyeful of both girls' gentle expressions. Awkward. A few awkward moments passed, and the three of them switched gears until they were talking like they were just together yesterday, joking around, and 𝗧𝗏𝗄 explaining what she had been doing lately. Apparently, 𝗧𝗏𝗄 was helping her parents manage their construction company. She was good with bookkeeping, and like Izuku and Shoko, she did not slack off in her training. As they started to walk to UA, she was candid about the fact she was quickly catching up to Shoko as far as her fitness went. Oh. The three of them found themselves at the door of their shared classroom, 1A, the giant doorway being the only barrier. Whoa. Hugh, Shoko said, looking up at the giant 1A painted on its surface. You can say that again. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 replied. I think it's an accessibility thing, but honestly this campus was way too big. Izuku added, the trio only coming to a quarter of the door's height. Shoko could not help but agree. The three of them had to run to make sure that neither of them was late. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 had apologized profusely as they ran. Well, why don't we go in? Shoko said, opening the sliding door. Shoko stiffened, and Izuku narrowed his eyes when the trio's ears were assaulted by the voice of examinee 7111. Well, someone is energetic. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 commented with a nervous chuckle. Don't put your feet on the desk. 7111 said to a spiky-headed blonde that Izuku knew all too well. Great. Katsuki. Izuku thought as he did not care for either 7111 or Katsuki. Huh. Katsuki began, his feet not leaving the desk surface, making clear that he did not care for 7111's protest. Don't you think that's rude to the UA senpai before us and the people who made the desk? The boy said, nearly shouting and pointing at the desk. Nope. What junior high did you go to, you side character? Katsuki retorted, clear in his delinquent play. Shoko frowned. She remembered him, and if it wasn't for her meeting Izuku, she would have regretted helping in the blonde boy's rescue. His attitude was a reminder of the existence of her old man. The whole, I'm above everyone else act pissed her off. 7111 seemed to be taken aback by the question before he answered it anyway. I attended semi-private academy. My name is 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝗏. Tenya introduced himself, with a hand to his chest. Semi? So you're a damn elite, huh? Looks like I'll have fun crushing you. It's like he lives in his own world. Not that I blame him. Izuku thought, thinking of every time that he had been in the same class as his childhood friend, how the teachers and other students treated him all because of how strong his quirk was. Though that was the case, then Izuku quickly found out that despite Explosion's pure firepower, it did not hold a candle to the versatility of his tendrils or 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻's zero gravity, and lacked the power of one for all or have the ability to cremate someone like Shoko's supernovae in an instant at that if he was right about her being nowhere near her peak. It was only in the last 3 months did he realize that Katsuki Bakugo was a big fish in a small pond, so to speak. Crushing? That's cruel. Do you truly aim to be a hero? Tenya asked Katsuki. About that Izuku was sure. Despite how he might act around others, Katsuki was 100% serious about becoming a hero. That was the one thing the two of them shared, that for better or for worse it kept them around each other. It was at that moment the pair noticed the trio. You're. As he said that, the heads of the class all turned towards them, seeming like they were the last to come. Good morning. Tenya especially walked up to Izuku. I am from semi-private academy. My name is. Yeah, we heard. Shoko interjected in a dismissive tone, with a hand at her waist. Even 𝗧𝗏𝗄 was tense, remembering how Tenya insulted Izuku in front of the other examinees. Tenya froze in mid-stride as he was not sure how to react. Izuku nervously chuckled and waved him off. You don't have to worry. We kinda overheard you talking to him. Izuku said with a pointed glance at Katsuki. I'm Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Ida-san. Todoroki. Uraraka. The girls both introduced themselves without much fanfare. Midoriya-kun, you realized there was something more to that exam, didn't you? Izuku had no clue what he was on about. Of course, he knew with how quirks manifest he would be able to disable the robots without using one for all to destroy them. Was that what he meant? Then his mind went to the hero points to the exam and Toshinori's explanation of them, and Izuku had an imaginary light bulb pop over his head. I had no idea. Tenya bowed his head in shame. I misjudged you. I hate to admit it, but you are better than me. Izuku felt bad. He did not realize that was part of the exam either. and the girls were offering Tenya narrowed glances as they watched the interaction. I mean, this is a hero school, right? It's not like they were going to grade you on just how much you can destroy. Think about it, the hero points were probably not the only other thing they looked at. Shoko spoke to Tenya with a condescending tone, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 backed her, nodding along. Well, aren't you the sharp one? Both Shoko and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 had a chill run down their spines as the tired voice of an older man came from behind them, and without a word they both hid behind 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 with a hand at their skirts, eyeing a tired-looking man in a sleeping bag suspiciously, while he laid on the floor under a meter from where they stood. At least you are not noisy, and you are a cautious group. That's good for the hero course. The man yawned, getting up from the floor and out of his sleeping bag. Teacher? 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 asked with a tense posture, his arms semi-extended to cover the girls on instinct. Bingo, the man thought, looking the trio over. So these three know each other, he thought as 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 relaxed his stance, but not enough to suggest he fully trusted the man's answer. Now then. The man took out his eye drop bottle from a stiff scarf around his neck and used it on his own eyes, putting 2 drops of the solution in each eye. If you please find your seats, I am about to take roll. The man spoke quietly at the 4 teens in his line of sight. The 4 of them scattered to the 4 empty seats out of 18. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 sat next to a bored-looking girl with short black hair in the front row next to the window overlooking the hallway. Shoko sat in between a spiky redhead boy and a pink-haired girl, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 sat near the middle behind Shoko and in between a tall, muscular boy with big lips and short boy with what looked like greased-up balls for hair. Their teacher took his place in front of the classroom behind a podium. I am Shoyuta Aizawa. I am your homeroom teacher, he said. It's kind of sudden, but put these on and go to the field. Since everyone seems to be here. The class was mystified when Aizawa pulled a PE uniform from the sleeping bag he was dragging around. A Quirk assessment test. The entire class spoke in unison as they were all in the PE gear and on the school's track field. What about the entrance ceremony? Shouldn't we be there too? An energetic PE uniform in the form of a girl asked, clear that they were missing it. If you're going to become a hero, you don't have time for leisurely events. Aizawa spoke from experience, turning away from the 18 students. UA's selling point is how unrestricted its school traditions are. He turned to look at his students facing the field. That's also how the teachers run their classes. There were various expressions from the class, among them Izuku, Tenya, the bored-looking girl, a girl that had a tight ponytail, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, and Shoko did not have much of a reaction. Which Aizawa took note of. It is clear that they expected some form of this. This was going to be an interesting year, he thought to himself. You kids have been doing these since junior high too, right? He continued as he walked through the field, stopping at markings that were clearly made for the shot put event, producing a ball and a small device, showing the device to his class. Physical fitness test where you weren't allowed to use your quirks. The device showed a list of several track events, among other tests. The country still uses averages taken from results from students not using their quirks. It's not rational. Well, the Ministry of Education is procrastinating, and it was on purpose. He wasn't going to tell them that it was to keep the status quo with the quirkless. He then pulled out a list on his device. If I say your name, I want you to line up behind me facing your classmates. Midoriya, Ojiro, Yaoyorozu, Todoroki, and Kodai. The class was surprised as the 2 recommendation students and 3 others were called, with them moving to be on either side of Aizawa. Shoko and Izuku were joined by the girl with the ponytailed Yaoyorozu, the boy with the flesh-colored tail from the exams, 𝗔𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏, and the bored-looking girl, Kodai. These 5 scored the highest on the exams among their peers in both the practical and written. So their scores in the assessment will not be held against them. Midoriya, Aizawa said, looking over his shoulder to Izuku behind him, passing him the small weighted ball that the boy nearly dropped. Why, yes, sir. Since you scored the highest on the exams, you should demonstrate this next test for me. Aizawa spoke, motioning for the others to return to where they stood with the rest of the class. What was your best score in the softball test without your quirk? 47 meters. Izuku answered, nervously looking at Katsuki staring a hole in him. Izuku knew what he might be thinking, despite knowing that the other boy's mother celebrated the fact that Izuku had a quirk. Then, try it using your quirk, Aizawa said as the class was interested in what the boy's quirk might be. Izuku looked at the ball before testing its weight, turning to Aizawa in the process. Can I throw it however I want? That is the test, alright. Hurry up. Give it all you've got, 𝐬𝐽 retorted, moving to stand with his class, all the while Katsuki was stewing in the background. Izuku nodded at the black tendrils coming from the arm holding the ball. They wrapped around his forearm, then the ball extended themselves to be half an arm's length from his hand. With a deep breath, he got in position, beginning to spin on his heels. After a couple of spins, he released the tendrils from the ball, launching it as the boy reached the apex of his spin. The ball broke the sound barrier before disappearing into the morning sky. Know your own maximum first. The ball fell a great distance away as 𝐈𝐧𝐽 began his lecture. That is the most rational way to form the foundation of a hero. Say, Midoriya? Yes, sir. You were holding back, weren't you? Yes, if I had thrown that normally with my full strength, then I would have broken something in my arm. As soon as the words left Izuku's mouth, there was light gossip among the crowd. 𝐈𝐧𝐽 revealed the results of Izuku's test, grinning. 803 meters was displayed on the screen, getting even louder gasps from the crowd. What is the meaning of this? A very angry voice pierced through the crowd, Izuku's senses screaming to him to be on guard, and a trail of explosions complementing the voice. Hey, tell me what's going on, Deku, you bastard. Izuku readied himself for a fight immediately, watching his childhood friend push past Ochako straight for him. Before he could get anywhere close to Izuku, two pieces of fabric wrapped themselves around Katsuki's head and torso, stopping him dead. What the? These cloths are hard. Katsuki spoke, struggling against the cloth. They're weapons for capture made out of carbon fiber woven together with metal wire made of a special alloy. Stand down, all of you. 𝐈𝐧𝐽 spoke as looked he from Izuku with several tendrils swimming in the air around him, to Ochako hovering in place with a death grip on Shoko's shoulder with a glare trained on Katsuki, and Shoko herself with a blank stare of her own while the ice that covered her arms fell off in waves as her blue flames broke through the surface. Geez. I am not going to be using my quirk over and over, just because you can't get along with your peers, Bakugo. 𝐈𝐧𝐽 spoke in an angry tone that elicited fearful glances between the five of them. I have dry eye. Geez. I am not going to be using my quirk over and over, just 'cause you can't get along with your peers, Bakugo. 𝐈𝐧𝐽 spoke in an angry tone that elicited fearful glances between the five of them. I have dry eye. With those words, Izuku had a light bulb appear in his head. He had been wondering which hero 𝐈𝐧𝐽 was, but it was not only until now that he was able to recognize the man. It all started with the sleeping bag, then the eye drops, and now it was the man's words and equipment. The Erasure Hero Eraserhead. Izuku thought as he watched his childhood friends struggle against their new teacher's binds, confused about why his quirk was not working. It may be the time he spent with Ochako and Shoko, but he stayed silent about his most recent discovery, planning to tell only them and warn them to stay out of the man's line of sight in case of emergencies. We are wasting time. Whoever's next, get ready. 𝐈𝐧𝐽 said, walking away after a few tense moments and everyone calming down. Izuku wasted no time moving to Ochako and Shoko's side, both girls welcoming him. Are you okay, Izuku? Ochako asked, worried over whatever that was. Do you guys know each other? She questioned as the boys smiled at her. That is a long story. If you want to know, we can talk about it later. But not here, Izuku said, looking at Katsuki, who had not moved one bit, not the only one who wasn't moving. Shoko knew that she did not care for Katsuki after his display in the classroom early, but now she was certain. This asshole had a similar complex as her father, and it was a driving factor in her hating him too, even more now that she can confirm that he was one of Izuku's bullies. She raised her hand, getting 𝐈𝐧𝐽's and the class's attention. 𝐈𝐧𝐽-sensei, mind if I go next? She spoke calmly. Like I said, go ahead. She started moving towards the spot where Izuku threw his ball, only to be stopped by Izuku's voice behind her. Shoko, don't hold back, Izuku said, looking at 𝐈𝐧𝐽, who was messing with the small device with a glance. Shoko smiled and Ochako got the message as well. The two were thinking that there was more than what meets the eye when it came to this test, and not showing out for the class was not an option. Shoko gave Izuku a thumbs up before taking her place with one of the balls in her hands. The girl took a few practice throws before she took a swing at it. Smoke came from the ball as she got into position for an overhand throw, and what a throw it was as she followed through. The ball was trailed by blue flame. The ball followed a much wider arc than 𝗧𝗂𝐴's, letting off a loud whistle as it traveled. 𝐒𝐴𝑧𝐻 let out a similar sound as the ball landed, turning the device to his students. They were all impressed with the 957M on the device's screen. It appeared that no one was able to follow the opening 2 acts. No one but one. 𝗧𝗏 got something that should not be possible, Infinity M. Infinity. No one in the class was able to believe it. The class continued like that. Every person who excelled at certain events were those who had quirks that were geared towards those events. Shoko topped the events that required speed and those that required flexibility. Izuku and 𝗧𝗏 were closer to the middle of the pack, but their stamina was far above everyone else, and with both of their ingenuity they were more than often near the top of each event. Until the class had exhausted themselves and every event on 𝐈𝐧𝐻's list. Okay, I'll quickly tell you the results. The total is simply the marks you got from each test. It's a waste of time to explain verbally, so I'll show you the results all at once. The man grinned, pulling out the small device. Right, I should have told you this before, but there was more to this test. Some had figured it out, but if your results did not impress me, then the person in last place will be expelled from the hero course. Silence. An unbearable quiet took the class ransom. What? The shout came from several students, with 𝗧𝗏 and Shoko sparing a glance at Izuku. The boy felt something was off all morning, like they were being tested from the very jump. He was right. Since the first student entered the classroom, 𝗧𝗏 was watching them. The man had a reputation for expelling students who did not meet his very high standards. Izuku was glad that he had looked into heroes that had support-orientated quirks, because finding out that a hero that he was going to model himself after if he had not gotten his quirks was an infamous teacher at UA made him cautious and probably saved him in the end, and he felt sorry for whichever classmate that was getting expelled from the hero course. That's not fair, why didn't you tell us? A dirty blonde-haired boy with a lightning bolt dyed in his bangs said, flabbergasted. That's right, and it is the first day too. Someone else panicked. Interestingly enough, the 5 names he called earlier and several others said nothing and even looked calm, all things considered. 𝗧𝗏 was going to put whichever person out of the ones he called who slacked off on the chopping block with the rest of the class, but the man was impressed when all 5 gave it their all. There was something that those of you who are complaining right now don't understand. This is the hero course for a reason. If you are here to make friends, and that's your priority to do, so then you are in the wrong place. Listen. Do you know what the rate of mortality and corruption of rookies in a single year is? Out of the hundreds of heroes that enter the system, only a handful of them have what it takes to even think of this as a career, your life, your sanity, and it's even worse for you girls. Despite what you think, your life is always in danger every time you are out there in a hero costume. My job is to make sure you are an example for the civilians. It's my responsibility that you don't go out in the world and think any differently than you should. And if that means if I have to stop a student or 2 from throwing their life away over a dream they can't achieve, then so be it. You can hate me if you will. 𝗧𝗏 spoke the most he had all day. All the fight in the class stopped and the man readied the test scores, to the worried glances of most of his students. A projection came out and mostly sighs of relief filled the air, all but one choked breath. 1. Shoko Todoroki. 2. Izuku Midoriya. 3. Momo Yaoyorozu. 4. Katsuki Bakugo. 5. Tenya Ida. 6. Ochako Uraraka. 7. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 𝗏. 8. Yui Kodai. 9. Ejiro Kirishima. 10. Masahiro Ojiro. 11. Koji Koda. 12. Rikido Sato. 13. Yuga Aoyama. 14. Hantashiro. 15. Denki Kaminari. 16. Toru Hagakure. 17. Kyokujiro. 18. Minoru Mineta. Minoru, the short boy who was assigned to the seat next to 𝗧𝗏, began hyperventilating, staring a hole in the projection. He was dead last in his class, or should he say was the dead last of their class. A somber mood took over the class as his former classmates got out of his way as he moved closer to 𝗧𝗏. This can't be real. The teen dropped to his knees, trying to stop the tears that pricked at his eyes, his vision blurring. This is just a test, right? To see what we would do in this situation. Minoru grasped at straws, trying to turn his head away from reality, the words being caught in his throat. He had no choice in the matter. Aizawa took this opportunity to offer some words that would bring comfort to the boy. Normally I would have let you reflect on today, but like your classmates, you impressed me. Instead of the hero course, I will suggest that you move to general studies. Minoru looked at him confused. This school, like the other top schools in Japan, has a history of letting general course students into the hero course after being tested by their teachers and peers. That is if you want. I am not forcing you or anything. We can talk this over with your parents. But you cannot stay in the hero course. Unlike the rest, you are not suited mentally or physically to what I will be demanding of you as your teacher. Minoru could only stay still and nod. He did not argue what the older gentleman was saying. All that he knew was he wanted to be a hero, and he was going to stop at nothing to achieve it. This was a setback that he could bounce back from, he wanted to bounce back from. Looking at Aizawa, he finally nodded in recognition of what the man said. If I can, I want to go to the general course, and if what you say is true, then... Minoru's voice trailed off as the tears were freely falling, but he had a chance at redemption and he was going for it. This for Izuku brought him memories from a year ago, to the time when he had no quirks, to a time when the #1 hero himself told him to give up on his dreams, and it hurt. Watching Minoru break down made him return to that place, made him relive the exact moment that his heart was torn apart and he had nearly given up on everything, and it hurt. Shoko, remembering the first time that she and Izuku spoke, made her realize that Izuku was in the same shoes as Minoru then, not the same now but similar enough to know that her friend was hurting too, moving closer to him to the point that they were almost touching side by side. "Are you okay, Izuku?" she whispered. Izuku did not answer. He only stared a hole in the back of the head of their now former classmate. Though he said nothing, the only solace that she could take was the fact that he was not tense anymore as she ran back to the conversation she had with her mother about Izuku months back. "What am I supposed to do?" She questioned the image of her mother, joining Izuku in staring. At the same time, Ochako noticed what her friends were doing, and she could not help but worry about Izuku as well. She had no idea why his posture changed, but she could question that later. She too wanted to offer her support to him. He and his mother have done so much for her, and she could not think of how to repay them both, so she figured that this was a start, taking the side opposite of Shoko. Without any more words, the girls offered their silent support to Izuku. Oh. Several hours later, the hybrid principal chuckled to himself, reflecting on the day. He had gotten a report that one of the members of 1A would be moved to the general course. It was not what he was expecting, but it went as he was planning for regardless. At that moment, he got a knock at his door, him leaning into his desk, having called someone to his office. "Come in," 𝗍𝗓 said in a neutral tone. The person knocking did that after getting the hybrid bear/dog/mouse's permission. "Like, you rang for me, Principal 𝗍𝗓?" A girl in the school's uniform came in with a worried expression, combing her hand through her blonde hair, with her brown eyes with gold flakes trained on the principal. 𝗍𝗓 laughed, motioning for her to come closer as the girl did. "You are not in trouble, Mississippi at 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I have 2 things for you. How are you feeling about the school so far?" 𝗍𝗓 questioned, as he could not wait to tell the girl the news of her acceptance change, with her waiting a year on the UA waiting list. "Like, it's my first day, so I don't have, much of an opinion, but from what I saw so far, it's totally like my parents described, so that's something, I guess," 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, looking up to the ceiling in thought. "That's to be expected in this day and age. But that is not why you are here. The situation changed as planned, and as we spoke before, you are now in the top class in the hero course as of tomorrow morning. Your homeroom teachers, both new and old, have been briefed. You will have to report to 1A now, but everything else has not changed. I hope this is satisfactory for you." 𝗍𝗓 spoke, watching for the teen's reaction. "Like, are you for real, dude?" The girl's voice cracked from her excitement. She was not prepared for it to happen this soon. She had to wait a year just to be accepted to UA to begin with. As a heart attack. Hearing 𝗍𝗓 speak, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 hopped in place before quickly covering the space between the door and the principal's desk, sweeping him out of his chair and into an embrace. She had refused other hero schools to go to the school that her parents went to, even getting a part-time job when she got on the school's waiting list. Now she was getting to attend the school's top class, and she was all for it. Her hard work was all worth it in the end. 𝗎𝗓 was happy for the girl, but there was one thing that he couldn't stand, the one thing that the girl was doing now. 𝗧𝗵𝗲-san, do you mind? 𝗧𝗵𝗲, returning to the present, stopped in her tracks, looking down. Her vision landed on the principal in her arms, her principal. She immediately let the hybrid go, having 𝗎𝗓 have to catch himself before he hit the floor. Oh, my bad, sir. I didn't mean to do that to you. I was just stoked, you know. It is quite alright, young miss, you are not the first, but I guess you are the first to be moved to the hero course in this way. So that is to be expected, but do not do that again, 𝗧𝗵𝗲-san. 𝗎𝗓 said, chuckling. Yes, sir. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 paused to only realize that 𝗎𝗓 had called her for two things, and she wondered if his news was the first. You said you had, two things for me? 𝗎𝗓 had forgotten in the moment, but he did have something for her. Moving back to his desk, he struggled to open one of the drawers of his desk with his almost 90 centimeters frame. He pulled out a case around the same size as him, dragging it to 𝗧𝗵𝗲 with a smile. Since you were a late entry, we had to finish your requested costume on short notice. Please let me know if it does not fit or is not to your specifications. 𝗎𝗓 said, passing the case with the number 18 on it. Bring it when you go to Class 1A tomorrow, or in the case it is not to your liking a PE uniform. It is the first of your practical lessons. He finished as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 couldn't help but hug the case tightly. I'll totally do that, sir. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 hummed to herself, swaying with the case in her arms. So about Katsuki? Izuku was on his way home from the first eventful day of school with Ochako, them taking the train in the same direction, while Shoko had to help her sister. I guess you could call us childhood friends despite us never being that close. In all honesty, I think we did it for our moms. Izuku explained like he had promised the girl sitting next to him in the nearly empty train car, a couple stops from his stop. Other than that, he basically picked on me for not having a quirk when we were younger. I think he thought I was hiding it from him or something. Sounds like a lot. Does Shoko know? Ochako asked, getting the gist of the situation, tripping up on Shoko's name. Izuku laughed, waving his hand over his face. No, and I don't plan to tell her, at least not until she knows Katsuki a little better. You know how she will react if nothing changes, he said with an unreadable expression. I think that people shouldn't judge a book by its cover. I am not making excuses for him or anything, but I get it, Ochako said with a bright grin. Despite why they wanted to become a hero, he has to have to be very dedicated to still want to be a hero after Aizawa's speech and test, and that she isn't the most noble person herself. That's why she wants to give Katsuki a chance, but if he continued to act the way he had, she would be right beside her friend in wanting to tear him apart. But that's no excuse. What if you were both in the middle of a rescue, or we were in the middle of a lesson at school? No grudge should take over you to the point you would get expelled from one of the top hero schools in the world. Plus, if he did, then what? He would blame you for it like a spoiled brat. More she thought it over, the more her blood boiled. Izuku was not the only quirkless in the world after all, and if Katsuki treated Izuku like he was beneath him, she could only imagine what he would do to a stranger. Ochako knew what she just said. She knew that it was wrong to think that way, but she could not help but feel the way she did. Izuku examined his friend deep into her inner turmoil and decided to change the subject to something a bit lighter. She had not gotten her hero costume from them, and that could brighten the mood, so he went for it. So we have a practical lesson tomorrow. And, it just dawned on him what he was about to say to her. He was going to invite her to his home without his mother being there. She had already come to the apartment before when his mother got her measurements, but since the same woman wasn't going to be there, he was keenly aware that this was going to be a problem for him either now or later. Well, since you haven't been by to get your hero costume, I figure that, you could get it now. He finished with a nervous chuckle. Ochako, perturbed, was in her thoughts, half listening to Izuku when the words, hero costume, entered her ears, and with that, her earlier mood left, being replaced with a more jovial one. Did they come? She asked Izuku, looking deep into his eyes, excitement or something close showing in hers. Izuku, for his part, smiled and nodded, getting her to bounce in her seat slightly. They took long enough. All the girls in our class had gotten theirs done by the school, and all of them besides Tadu. Shoko had them ready for tomorrow. I kind of figured that we were just going to be in our uniforms for those first couple of lessons. I'm sorry, Izuku said apologetically, not knowing how much she was looking forward to having her hero costume done. For what? 𝗧𝗏𝗄 asked, confused. Well, we had yours for over a month now, and mine had just arrived. And you were busy, so we were not able to get to you until now. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 cocked her head, confused about why he was apologizing. She did not pay for it, and if it was not ready, she would just wear her school uniform until it was. She was happy that even then he and his mother still thought of her despite the 2-month absence. That's fine, it was something I was not thinking about. How is it? She giggled when 𝗧𝗏𝗄 looked at her, confused. You have seen it, right? How do you think it would look on me? 𝗧𝗏𝗄 questioned. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 took some time to think things over, all the while blushing, imagining her in a state of undress. Well, I wouldn't know. He coughed to clear his throat. I'm not much of a fashion person. I would have to see you in it. If that's the case, I hope you don't mind if I tried it on at your house. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 said in mid-thought. Her costume ended up being different from what she had in mind, at least from the designs that Mori-san had sent her. It was a high-collar white, green, and orange one-piece suit, with the white of the suit made from a thick material to help protect her vitals from piercing weapons and diffuse most of the blunt force that she may experience. Those white armored points were lined with an orange cloth-like material that was supposed to help the suit breathe and not hinder her movements. And the green material made up most of her suit is something super flexible despite not knowing what it was made out of, and the whole thing came with 5 pairs of white artist gloves. She had gotten the gloves made because her quirk tended to fire up on its own in certain circumstances, and being around 𝗧𝗏𝗄 might make those times come up more often with how clumsy they both can get. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 stared at her like she grew a second head before realizing that he was the one who invited her to his home first. Getting pink-tinted cheeks, he looked up at the train car's roof. Yeah. I can't wait. Cringing at what he said, he paused for a moment before continuing to convince her that he wasn't some sort of pervert. I mean, I'm a nerd about all of this, and I would like to know what you had in mind for yours. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 spoke, scratching his cheek. Really? Same here. Well, I don't really get the tech side, but I really want to see you in yours too. It would be like our own little fashion show. Saying that, 𝗧𝗏𝗄 put her hands together in mild thought. I just had a thought. Do you mind if we get off at the next stop? There is something I want to get your mom as a thank you gift, she said, a grin gracing her face. It was a grin that 𝗧𝗏𝗄 had seen many times while hanging out with her and Shoko, and he had trouble saying no to it. Not that he wanted to say no right now. I don't mind. He was too shy to say this, but he loved spending time with the girls. But I am sure that my mom would say this too. I am pretty sure that you don't have to. We'd be both happy that you liked the costume. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 let off a shy smile, shrinking in her seat. There were a lot of reasons that she was embarrassed that that statement made her happy, despite the fact that she was taught to return the kindness of others. I would have gotten her something regardless. Now I had an excuse. I also wanted to get my savior something as well. It took way too long to realize that she was talking about getting him a gift as well after he had saved her in the exams. Do as you wish, he exclaimed, red as a tomato. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 pumped her fist in celebration before taking his hand in hers before the train came to a complete stop. Come on, 𝗧𝗏𝗄, we don't have time to lollygag. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 knew where she wanted to go, and the two of them did not have time to take their time. If she was right, they had to hurry if she would have time for her to get the 2 gifts and go to 𝗧𝗏𝗄's home and be home at a reasonable time. Okay. Wait. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 tried being pulled behind her while they both ran. No time. 𝗧𝗏𝗄 responded. Oh. Near you, eh? 𝗧𝗏𝗄 was bowing her head at an older gentleman as he stalked the shelves of a store with an envelope in her hands stretched out to him. Her eyes, although closed, reflected her guilt on the reason that she was quitting her full-time job with little to no notice after asking for less hours. She felt as if she looked ungrateful after her boss basically took her in after moving here alone. What's that, 𝗬𝗄𝗄? The man asked, looking at the package. 𝗬𝗄𝗄 bit her lip before answering him. It's totally a resignation letter, dude. I'm in the hero course now and can't make it to work. So, sorry? She said, still bowing. The man looked at the letter and then at her like she grew a second head. She looked way too serious about the whole situation. When she first started working for him a year ago, he had totally pegged her as a gal, but things like this proved him wrong, and if she is a very sincere one. He was not going to correct her about this now. But after making sure to transfer her to a part-timer, he would have hoped that she could still come in for the weekend, but that doesn't seem like that was going to be the case anymore. Congrats, 𝗬𝗄𝗄. You have been working hard and you are one step closer to your dream, girl. I am proud of you. But what do you mean that you are quitting? I thought we just talked about making you a part-timer from now on, the man said, taking the letter from her. Cammy was trying to keep her emotions in check. Not only did this man give her a job when no one else would hire her, but for the last year he would take her in or drive her home when she felt homesick or it was a major holiday. This whole situation felt like a betrayal to her. She wants to give her all with everything she did, and she couldn't work here anymore if she were to do that. Totally sorry, Okita-san. I know we did that, but, the hero course is so much more intense than my usual classes, you know? So I, feel really bad if I gotta take time for it, you know? Okita frowned at the answer she gave. Cammy was working here to save up for tuition to begin with, and most of her money went to that. He knew that she was going to have a tough time getting by with her wage over the last year, and he felt bad because of her. That's why as he looked at what her face looked like as she tried to quit, he knew what he had to do. With one swift motion, he tore the letter in two. That's not going to work for me, Cammy. He smiled at her face of shock. He was going to keep his favorite employee around whether she liked it or not. He was worried that she would not be able to take care of her expenses on her own, and knowing her, she would not want her grandparents to worry over her. How are you going to live without this job? And there's tuition too. Are you going to skip meals to pay for it? And what about holidays and breaks? What are you going to do then? Are you going to spend a fortune to head up north? He watched as she couldn't look him in the eye as he spoke. And what are you going to do if rent increases again? I know that I might be just your boss, but both me and Naomi care for you. And we want to help you, so you can't quit that easily. Cammy, with how Mr. Okita and his wife who have looked after her over the last year, broke down, collapsing on her knees as her bottom lip quivered. They were the only ones outside of her immediate family who did not laugh at her dream, and she could not thank them enough for what they had been doing. She was going to pay them back one day. So, what should I totally do now, Okita-san? Cammy asked him as her eyes started to water. Well, for one, stop calling me Okita, call me by name. Hero, like you call them Mrs. Naomi. And you should think about what to do. You are a part-timer after all. Hero said, dropping to face her in the eye. And I was thinking that I should take care of your tuition instead of a full paycheck. What if we take a percentage of what you would make in a semester and use that to pay for it? This way he could give her a well-deserved raise without raising eyebrows. But as your hours go, call me as you settle in and we can work on a schedule that works around yours. Plus, I was talking with Naomi and she would love for you to live with us for a while, especially with how UA's tests for the hero course can be. But this is all about what you want. Think it over, all right? He said with a hand on her shoulder to offer her some comfort. The teen, for her part, knew what she wanted to do. If the couple would have her, she wanted to take Hiro and Naomi on their offer. She had grown to care about them over the past year, so this was something that she felt that she couldn't pass up, and she was not. I totally don't want to think about it, okay? Hiro-san, I get that I might be a total burden, but, I want to take you up on your offers, okay? Is that so? Well, why don't we work out the details with Naomi, go on, and close up shop for the day? We have to get everything prepared for you. Knowing Naomi, she is going to be thrilled that you got into the hero course on your first day. Hiro said with a grin. Oh. Two-toned hair looked down at the phone in their hands like they have gotten away with murder. Hey, sis, where do you want the empty boxes? The voice of one Shoko Todoroki entered this girl's ears, nearly causing her to drop the phone. This person, Mayumi Todoroki, was currently making plans in her sister's stead. Knowing Sho, that's going to be a hard sell, especially when she is not the only girl. She thought as she finally replied. Just leave them by the door to my room. I will sort them out later. You shouldn't worry about all of that now. We promised Mom that we would move into the new place slowly. Yeah. Shoko poked her head into the kitchen area, most likely looking for her phone. Have you seen my phone? She said, looking at her sister who had her back turned to her. Oh right, it's right here, Mayumi said, displaying the young teen cell in her hands. Shoot, I didn't have time to delete my messages to Midoriya. She is definitely going to freak out. Deciding that it was best after finishing her thought, she looked at her sister in clear guilt. Hey Sho? Shoko, after seeing that look, knew that something was wrong with her sister. Or at the very least, the older Todoroki had done something that would upset her. "Oh no, what did you do? How did you?" Fuyumi began before explaining herself. "You know that mom is coming for dinner, right?" "Yeah." Shoko responded in a questioning tone. "Well, promise me that you won't get mad, Sho." Fuyumi looked, and Shoko was confused by the statement. "I may have pretended to be you to invite the Midoriyas to dinner with mom next week." Fuyumi braced herself for the fallout. "Why?" Shoko sounded more shocked than angry. "Well, you have been homeschooled for the past year before high school, and you haven't seen your friends since that incident 2 months ago, so I thought. And mom agreed that you make up for lost time. I mean, you like." "La la la la." Shoko interrupted, walking away. "Do whatever, just next time ask before you steal my phone, sis," she said, finishing. Fuyumi grinned, putting Shoko's phone away. That girl is still not confronting her feelings. Well, next week should be fun.